Chapter 1333. Ji Tianqing's eyes were glued to the bronze dragon tripod. He could not take his eyes off of it. The style of the bronze tripod was ancient and simple. There were no complicated patterns or patterns. It was simple but majestic. Other than the 6 ears and 9 dragons as decorations, there were 4 lines of ancient words engraved on the tripod. Even with his knowledge and experience, he could not identify what those words were. He only knew that this ancient, mysterious and majestic bronze tripod must be the Big Dipper Godfire tripod that he was about to get. The divine tripod stood motionless at the top of the altar. There was a hint of dark red on the tripod and it emitted a terrifying heat. Inside the bronze tripod, there was an endless amount of heavenly wind and flowing fire. It was spewed out from the mouths of the 9 dragons, forming 9 dragon-shaped fire pillars that did not dissipate for a long time. Ji Tianqing stared at the divine tripod with bright eyes. He was in awe and his heart was moved. But at this moment, a cold and dignified female voice suddenly sounded in the cave. "Who are you?" Ji Tianqing was suddenly awakened. He immediately turned his head and looked to the north of the cave. He saw that at the northern edge of the cave, there was a 10-foot-high platform. There was a wide throne on it. The throne was very exquisite and beautiful. It was inlaid with all kinds of dark red, dark gold and dazzling purple gems. It exuded a sacred and luxurious aura. Most importantly, this throne was extremely beneficial to one's cultivation. On the luxurious throne sat an old woman in a luxurious green robe. The old woman looked like she was in her 70s or 80s. Her waist-long hair had turned silver and was tied up in a dignified and elegant bun with a jade hairpin. But the old woman's face did not look old. Her skin was still white and soft. She was no different from a woman in her 30s. Her face could not be called beautiful, but she had a dignified and elegant temperament. She looked extremely noble. Her eyes were bright and deep. They contained the light of wisdom, but they were not aggressive. Even though she was glaring at Ji Tianqing, the uninvited guest, with hostility emanating from her body, her gaze was not fierce. Ji Tianqing believed that one's face was a reflection of one's heart. Looking at this silver-haired old woman's face and eyes, he could guess that she must be a kind and benevolent old woman. However, even though the silver-haired old woman's aura was gentle, her body contained enough power to shake the heavens and earth. Her aura was incomparably powerful, as vigorous as a mountain, causing Ji Tianqing to feel reverence in his heart. He could almost immediately determine that the strength of the silver-haired old woman had long surpassed the spirit refinement realm and reached the essence spirit realm. After a moment of silence, he walked to the center of the cave and bowed to the silver-haired old woman from afar. However, before he could say his name, the silver-haired old woman's expression changed drastically when she saw his face. She had been sitting on the throne, meditating and cultivating the whole time. At this moment, she widened her eyes in shock and stared at Ji Tianqing in disbelief. She actually sat up with a swoosh. "You? Master?" The silver-haired old woman's expression was very complicated. Her eyes flickered, and the rim of her eyes was a little wet. She held the throne with one hand and stood up with a trembling body. She quickly walked toward Ji Tianqing. Ji Tianqing immediately swallowed the words he was about to say, and looked at the silver-haired old woman with confusion. "Strange, I haven't said my name and identity. Why is she so emotional? No, she doesn't even know me. Even if she saw me, she wouldn't be so emotional. She must have mistaken me for someone else." Thinking of this, he quickly said to the silver-haired old woman, "Senior, if I'm not wrong, you are Master Xueqi of the Hidden God sect, right?" "I am Ji Tianqing, the domain lord of the Tianqin domain. I have come to the Hidden God sect to visit Master Xueqi under the orders of the Emperor." After saying this, he took out the seal of mountains and rivers and presented it to the silver-haired old woman. The silver-haired old woman's body stiffened, and she was stunned on the spot. She frowned and stared at Ji Tianqing for a long time. Then she muttered in a low voice, "Impossible. How can there be such a similar person in this world?" After a while, she suppressed the shock and excitement in her heart and calmed down. She stared at the seal of mountains and rivers and observed it carefully for a moment. Then she sized up Ji Tianqing a few times before speaking in a calm tone. "I am the sect master of the Hidden God sect, Xueqi Ruoyu. Young man, did you just say that you are the domain lord of the Tianqin domain, Ji Tianqing?" "That's right, it's me." Ji Tianqing suppressed the doubts in his heart and nodded calmly. Xue Ruoyu continued to stare at him and asked, "You have come to our sect to look for me under the orders of the Emperor of the human race?" "Yes." Ji Tianxing nodded again. He didn't show it on his face, but he was muttering in his heart. So the master of the hidden god sect is called Xue Ruoyu. Such an elegant name. She must have been a beauty when she was young. However, she is the master of a sect, a primordial spirit realm expert. Who did she think I was just now? How could she lose her composure and be so emotional? At this time, Xue Ruoyu turned and walked back to the throne and sat down gracefully. She looked down at Ji Tianxing with deep eyes and said in a dignified tone, "Since you claim to be under the orders of the emperor, do you have the emperor's decree? If you don't have the emperor's personal decree, no matter what you say, I will not forgive you for trespassing on the forbidden grounds." Ji Tianxing was already prepared. He quickly took out the emperor's personal decree from his spatial ring. "Master Xue, I had no choice but to trespass on the forbidden grounds. Your sect has hidden the matters regarding the divine cauldron and the imperial court too deeply. Even the elders in the sect don't know about it. I couldn't see you, so I decided to trespass on my own." He gave a simple explanation. After he finished speaking, he waved his hand and shot out a golden light. It wrapped around the emperor's decree and flew to Xue Ruoyu. Xue Ruoyu stretched out her hand to receive the decree. She waved her hand and shot out rays of golden light. She executed a secret technique to undo the seal on the scroll. After a moment, the scroll slowly unfolded and floated in front of her. It lit up with a dazzling golden light. Ji Tianxing didn't know what was written in the emperor's decree. He only saw that when Xue Ruoyu saw the contents of the decree, her expression changed slightly. Her eyes even flashed with shock and disbelief. In fact, Xue Ruoyu couldn't help but take a few more glances at him before she finished reading the decree. This made him even more puzzled. He secretly guessed. What did the emperor say in the decree? Isn't it to take away the divine cauldron? After a long while, Xue Ruoyu finished reading the decree. She then kept the scroll and solemnly kept it in her spatial ring. She looked at Ji Tianxing with a burning gaze. Her gaze was complicated. She seemed to be excited and her heart was filled with emotions. After a moment of silence, she then asked, "Ji Tianxing, are you really the successor of the Kenshin?" Chapter 1334. Could it be that the monarch had pointed out my identity in the edict and said that I am the successor of the Kenshin? This was the first thought that appeared in Ji Tianxing's mind. He nodded at Xue Ruoyu and answered truthfully, "That's right." Xue Ruoyu's pupils contracted as her emotions became even more complicated. She actually sighed. She lowered her head slightly as a trace of sadness appeared in her eyes, as if she was recalling something from the past. A moment later, she continued to ask, "Tianxing, can you tell this old one how you obtained the Kenshin inheritance?" This. Ji Tianxing immediately frowned and hesitated to answer. He could naturally see that Xue Ruoyu's impression and attitude towards him had become much closer after learning that he was the successor of the Kenshin. He could no longer suppress the doubts in his heart as he asked Xue Ruoyu, "Sect Master Xue, this junior doesn't quite understand. Why are you asking about the Kenshin? This junior has come to the hidden god sect under the monarch's orders to take away the heavenly dipper god fire cauldron. What does this have to do with the Kenshin?" Xue Ruoyu was startled for a moment before she laughed involuntarily. Her laughter actually contained some bitterness and self-mockery. "Tianxing, don't be anxious about the heavenly dipper god fire cauldron. We can talk about it later. This old one only respects and admires the Kenshin. After learning that you are the successor of the Kenshin, I want to know more about you. You should be able to understand this old one's feelings, right?" Ji Tianxing shook his head as he said in a low voice, "Sect Master Xue, this junior may be young, but I am not someone who is ignorant of worldly affairs. When this junior barged into the cave just now, your mind was already in chaos the moment you saw this junior. You lost your composure and even mistook this junior for someone else. This junior is certain that you do not simply respect and admire the Kenshin. It is very likely that you are related to the Kenshin in some way." As he spoke, he stared intently at Xue Ruoyu, observing the changes in her expression. As expected, Xue Ruoyu's complexion changed slightly. Her gaze was somewhat evasive. She didn't dare to look directly into his eyes. Seeing her reaction, Ji Tianxing was even more certain. He continued, "A long time ago, a peerless master once told me that Kenshin had never taken in any disciples when he was alive, but he had 4 followers who could be considered his in-name disciples. The surnames of these 4 in-name disciples were Gu, Yi, Xiao, and Xueqi. As the descendant of the sword god, I have a mission, and that is to find these 4 seniors. Before this, I had already found Yi Hengchuan and Xiao Wentian. Ren Huangyi lived in seclusion in the boundless realm of the Mangu mountain range. He guarded the city alone and waited bitterly for one person. On the other hand, Xiao Wentian lived in seclusion in the great swamp of the southern wasteland and established the Xiao clan, an ancient family. He had long since flourished and had many children and grandchildren, enjoying the rest of his life. Of the 4 seniors, only Gu and Xueqi have not been found, and there have been no clues. Ji Tianqing spoke frankly with assurance. When Xueqi Ruyu heard these words, she tilted her head slightly. Her expression was very complicated as she remained silent. Ji Tianqing revealed a slight smile and said calmly, "When I came to the Hidden God sect previously, I only wanted to follow orders to retrieve the divine cauldron. I never thought about this matter. Even when I knew that the surname of the sect master of the Hidden God sect was Xueqi, I never thought about this. It was only now that I finally understand why you were so agitated. Even as an immortal soul stage master, you actually lost your composure. Sect Master Xueqi, if I'm not wrong, you are one of the 4 in-name disciples of Kenshin, Gu Yi, Xiao, Xueqi and Xueqi, right?" After he finished speaking, he looked at Xueqi Ruyu with a look of intense anticipation. Xueqi Ruyu was silent for a long time before she slowly turned her head to look at him. At this moment, not only did she look a little sad, but her eyes were also covered with a thin layer of mist. As an immortal soul stage master and a sect master, her heart was as still as water. She was an expert with a strong will and wouldn't lose her composure easily. If her will wasn't strong enough, how could she have guarded the Hidden God sect and protected the divine cauldron for hundreds of years? But now that she saw Ji Tianqing and heard Ji Tianqing talk about the past, she couldn't help but cry. This was because Ji Tianqing's guess was right. She was indeed the 4th disciple of Kenshin, Xueqi Ruyu. Furthermore, she had many stories, and her heart was filled with too much pain. "Tianqing, you are indeed Master's successor. Master's legacy will definitely be brought to greater heights in your hands. When you speak with fervor and assurance, your confident appearance and high spirits are so similar to Master back then." Xueqi Ruyu looked at Ji Tianqing and squeezed out a smile. Her tone was filled with emotion and reminiscence. When Ji Tianqing saw her expression and eyes, he suddenly felt a sense of déjà vu, and his heart was touched. "I seem to have seen Sect Master Xueqi's expression and eyes on Xiao Linger before. That's a kind of regret of not being able to love someone deeply. But compared to Xiao Linger, there's more despair and reminiscence in her eyes. After all, Kenshin is already dead. Sect Master Xueqi will never be able to see him again. Could it be that Sect Master Xueqi, as an in-name disciple of Kenshin, has fallen in love with Kenshin for her entire life?" This thought suddenly flashed across Ji Tianqing's mind, and he was stunned. At the same time, Burial of Heaven's deep and aged voice sounded in his mind. "You brat. You finally understood." Ji Tianqing understood what it meant and felt that it was unbelievable. "Burial of Heaven, did I guess correctly?" Burial of Heaven didn't reply to him. It said to Xueqi Ruyu in a deep and solemn tone, "Ah Xueqi, thousands of years have passed. You've also gone from a budding age to a white-haired person today. Why can't you resolve the knot in your heart and let him go?" Xueqi Ruyu was secretly upset. Suddenly hearing Burial of Heaven's voice, her body shook. She raised her sleeve to wipe away the tears in her eyes. She immediately turned her head and looked at Ji Tianqing with a burning gaze. She asked in disbelief, "Burial of Heaven? Is that its voice?" Ji Tianqing didn't say anything. He only nodded calmly. Burial of Heaven's voice sounded again. Its tone was filled with vicissitudes and emotions. Kenshin was obsessed with the way of the sword his entire life. He was born for the way of the martial way and died for the way of the divine way. There are many women like you who are infatuated with him without regret. But who can get his attention and love? Back then when Kenshin left, I reminded you not to be too emotional. In the end, the one who will be hurt will only be yourself. I didn't expect that after thousands of years, you would still be infatuated with him without regret. It's a pity that Kenshin won't be able to see it." This time, Xueqi Ruyu heard it clearly. She was immediately sure that this was indeed Burial of Heaven's voice. She stared at Ji Tianqing with a burning gaze and said in a complicated tone, Tianqing, you actually obtained the Burial of Heaven sword? What is its current situation? Ji Tianqing didn't say anything. He directly took out the broken Burial of Heaven and presented it in front of Xue Ruoyu. Xue Ruoyu's expression changed. Her figure flashed and flew over, landing beside Ji Tianqing. She stared at the Burial of Heaven sword and asked anxiously, Burial of Heaven? It really is you. Back then when you left with Master, where did you go? Chapter 1335. Xue Ruoyu could not believe her eyes. She could not believe that after 1,000 years, she would be able to see the sword of Burial of Heaven again. She was very emotional. After seeing the Burial of Heaven, she could no longer hold back her anxiety and doubts. She could not wait to ask the Burial of Heaven what had happened back then. This question had been hidden in her heart for 1,000 years. It had always been an unsolved mystery. Now, she could finally ask the Burial of Heaven personally. She would soon know the answer. She could not help but stretch out her hands and hold the sword of Burial of Heaven. She looked at it expectantly, waiting for its answer. The Burial of Heaven was silent for a while before it said in a low voice, Ah Xue, when Kenshin fell, I was also heavily injured and was almost completely destroyed. Even though I've awakened now, my memories are fragmented and incomplete. I can't remember clearly what happened in the past. Xue Ruoyu's body suddenly stiffened. The anticipation and anxiety in her heart gradually dissipated. No. How could this be? Burial of Heaven, you must know. You must know what happened. Think about it carefully. You will definitely remember. What happened to Master? The Burial of Heaven saw that she was getting more and more emotional. It comforted her. I know that you have been worried for 1,000 years. This question has also troubled you for 1,000 years. But I really can't remember clearly. I can only wait until I recover my vitality and gradually recover my memories. Only then will I know what happened. Ji Tianqing stood silently at the side, listening to the Burial of Heaven comforting Xue Ruoyu. He did not open his mouth to interrupt. After a long time, Xue Ruoyu's emotions gradually calmed down. She endured the sadness and sorrow in her heart and temporarily put this matter aside. She sat back on the throne. After a while, she returned to her usual appearance. She was still as calm and serene as before. Ji Tianqing looked at her silently. Seeing her joy and sorrow, he gradually understood her feelings. It seems that Sect Master Xue is also a person with a lot of stories. She was infatuated with Kenshin. Even if 1,000 years had passed, she would never regret it. The left protector was infatuated with her and even confessed his feelings to her in public, but she heartlessly rejected him. In the end, he became an old drunkard who drank to drown his sorrows. Sigh. The word love is hard to describe in a few words. The bitterness in Sect Master Xue's heart has been buried deep for 1,000 years. Today, after seeing me and the Burial of Heaven, it is normal for her to lose her composure. These thoughts flashed through Ji Tianqing's mind, and he couldn't help but murmur in a low voice. Once I see Kenshin, I'll make a mistake for life. If I don't see Kenshin, I'll make a mistake for life. At this time, Xue Ruoyu looked at Ji Tianqing with clear eyes and said calmly, Tianqing, I lost my composure just now and let you see a joke. However, we were talking about private matters just now. Now, this old woman will talk business with you. Ji Tianqing nodded and bowed slightly. Please speak, Sect Master Xue. Xue Ruoyu's expression was solemn, and she said solemnly, Since you are here on the orders of the Emperor, you must already know the origin of the Heavenly Dipper God Fire Cauldron and the origin of the Hidden God Sect. However, the Heavenly Dipper God Fire Cauldron is one of the clan protection divine artifacts of the Imperial Court, and it has a very strong restraining power against the devil race. However, this item is a divine artifact and not easy to control. Therefore, the Imperial Court will not use it unless it is absolutely necessary. Our sect was born to protect the Heavenly Dipper God Fire Cauldron, and it is very likely that we will die for it in the future. Hearing this, Ji Tianqing shook his head and said with a smile, Sect Master Xue, there is no need to worry. I am here to discuss this matter with you in order to take away the Heavenly Dipper God Fire Cauldron. The Emperor has already given the order to give this cauldron to me. If I take it away, the Hidden God Sect will no longer need to protect it. Xue Ruoyu revealed a meaningful smile and shook her head lightly. No, Tianqing, you are wrong. The Hidden God Sect was born to protect the Heavenly Dipper God Fire Cauldron, so it is natural that we will stay with it. Later, this old woman will help you refine the Heavenly Dipper God Fire Cauldron and obtain its approval. However, after you obtain the Heavenly Dipper God Fire Cauldron, this old woman will give you a big gift. What gift? Ji Tianqing frowned in confusion and asked subconsciously. The Hidden God Sect. Xue Ruoyu pointed above her head and said in a solemn tone, This old woman will give the entire Hidden God Sect to you. I can't accept this. Ji Tianqing was stunned for a moment, and quickly waved his hand to refuse. Sect Master Xue, the Hidden God Sect is the blood, sweat, and tears of several generations of your sect. I can't accept your gift. Xue Ruoyu looked at him with a firm gaze and said with an unquestionable tone, This matter is not something that you and I can decide. This is the Emperor's decision, and he has already stated it clearly in the order. This. Ji Tianqing was speechless. After all, it was the Emperor's order, and he couldn't refute it. After a moment of silence he asked, May I ask Sect Master Xue, what kind of gift are you talking about? Xue Ruoyu revealed a kind smile and explained, As long as you can obtain the Heavenly Dipper God Fire Cauldron's approval, the Hidden God Sect will be under your command and listen to your orders. In the future, when you go to the battlefield to resist the Devil Race's army, the Hidden God Sect will follow you to the battlefield and kill your enemies. Of course, you don't have to worry about the affairs of the Hidden God Sect. Normally, this old woman and the elders of the sect will take care of it, so you won't be distracted. Ji Tianqing thought for a moment and felt that this was a good idea, so he nodded in agreement. Many thanks for Sect Master Xue's help. Since this is the Emperor's order, I will follow it. Sect Master Xue, please tell the elders and disciples of your sect that I don't have the time to care about the Hidden God Sect, and I won't interfere in the sect's affairs. Only when the Imperial Court needs us to stand up and fight against the Devil Race and protect the people of the human race, will I command the entire Hidden God Sect. That's good. Xue Ruoyu saw that he finally agreed and nodded in satisfaction. Ji Tianqing hesitated for a moment and continued, Sect Master Xue, now that the Devil Emperor has returned to the Northern Desert, the Devil Race is rising and their forces are growing rapidly. Now the Devil Race's army is attacking the territories of the three races in a frenzy, trying to sweep across the profound sky continent, kill all living beings of the various races, and unify the world. Chaos has come, and as the domain lord under the Imperial Court, I naturally have to protect the peace of the region and fight against the Devil Race's army. In the past year, I have found Emperor Yi and Xiao Wentian and asked them to come out and help me fight against the Devil Emperor. Emperor Yi and Xiao Wentian have both agreed to this matter, and when I go to the Northern Desert, they will come out and help me. Today, I sincerely hope that Sect Master Xue can come out of seclusion and join us in resisting and dissolving the Demon Emperor's conspiracy. After he finished speaking, he looked at Xue Ruoyu with sincerity and bowed deeply. Xue Ruoyu didn't hesitate at all and nodded with a smile. Tianqing, in fact, you don't need to ask this old woman. This old woman will do her best to help you. After all, this is the Emperor's order. Chapter 1336. Seeing Xue Ruoyu agree decisively, Ji Tianqing let out a sigh of relief and hurriedly bowed to express his thanks. Many thanks for Sect Master Xue's help. Sect Master Xue is deeply righteous. This junior can't thank you enough. Xue Ruoyu waved her hand, indicating that he didn't need to be so courteous. She smiled amiably and said, In public, this old one is a trusted subordinate of the monarch. Naturally, I will obey the monarch's orders and help you with all my strength. In private, this old one is Master's fourth disciple, and you are the successor of Master's legacy. You are equivalent to this old one's junior brother. How can this old one not help you? Moreover, this old one also hates the Devil Race to the bone. I wish that I could be like Master, holding a 3-foot-long divine sword and slaughtering all the devils in the world. Hearing this, Ji Tianqing raised his eyebrows and asked with interest, Oh? Sect Master Xue also has a blood feud with the Devil Race? That's right. Xue Ruoyu nodded and explained in a low voice. This old one was born in a family of generals since young. 3 generations of my ancestors were all valiant generals of the Imperial Court and had outstanding military achievements. When this old one was young, the Devil Race wreaked havoc in the world. The Devil Emperor invaded the central state and wantonly massacred the common people. This old one's grandfather, father, and uncles all died on the battlefield under the blades of the Devil Race experts. Later on, this old one's entire family was besieged by the Devil Race experts. More than 300 people in the family were killed. It was the monarch who saved this old one, allowing this old one to survive. Later on, this old one met Master. It was Master's guidance and teaching that allowed this old one to become a martial expert and have today's achievements. Speaking up to here, Xue Ruoyu paused for a moment. Recalling those tragic past events, even after 1,000 years, she was still filled with grief and indignation. Her words were filled with monstrous hatred towards the devil race. After Master left the profound sky continent, this old one inherited my father's legacy and continued to serve the imperial court loyally. The monarch saw that this old one was talented and intelligent and was not suitable to lead an army in battle. Thus, he gave this old one a top-secret mission. Thus, this old one joined the divine hidden sect and started as an inner sect elder. 300 years ago, I was promoted to sect master and personally guarded the divine cauldron. After listening to Xue Ruoyu's narration of the past, Ji Tianqing finally understood the whole story. No wonder the water patriarch listened to the imperial court and guarded the cauldron for the imperial court. He hid his identity here for hundreds of years and was still loyal. I really didn't expect that sect master Xue, Kenshin and the monarch had such a relationship. If that's the case, the celestial emperor must have thought long and hard before sending me to the hidden god sect to look for sect master Xue and obtain the heavenly dipper god fire cauldron. Sex. That's why she's Willing's cauldron of Suvs. Sect masters. After that, the sect understood the sect well. To understand, the master's twos. The sect knows. T. Ji Tianqing listened patiently. He had a deeper understanding of Xue Ruoyu's past. Just as the old and the young were chatting happily, a stream of light suddenly flew over from the top of the cave and landed in front of Xue Ruoyu. Xue Ruoyu stretched out her hand and caught the stream of light in her palm. She opened her palm and saw that it was a communication jade slip with a seal on it. This was a secret jade slip that the first elder and second elder used only in emergencies. She raised her eyebrows and released a strand of consciousness from her primordial spirit. She entered the jade slip and checked the information inside. After a while, she put away the communication jade slip and glanced at Ji Tianqing with a strange expression. Ji Tianqing saw the change in her expression and guessed that it was probably a jade slip sent by the sect elder of the hidden god sect. The fact that he had injured the old drunkard and trespassed into the forbidden grounds must have been exposed. As expected, Xue Ruoyu looked at him with a playful expression and asked, "Tianqing, before you trespassed into the forbidden grounds, did you beat up the left protector?" Cough cough. Ji Tianqing was a little embarrassed. He explained with a smile, "Sect Master Xue, I had no choice. Please forgive me. The left protector was guarding the mountain gate. He didn't know the relationship between the hidden god sect and the imperial court, so he stopped me from entering. Fortunately, I knew Shi Zhongjian and was able to enter the sect. But when I went to talk to the second elder about this, the second elder didn't know. I didn't know when the second elder would report this to you, so I had no choice but to trespass into the forbidden grounds. But I didn't expect that the left protector had his eyes on me. When I was breaking the formation, he suddenly appeared and wanted to catch me and punish me. I had no choice but to agree to leave Sunless Peak with him and fight outside. But don't worry, the left protector and I were fighting like gentlemen. We only exchanged 2 or 3 moves." Xue Ruoyu watched him explain the matter without stopping, and she was actually watching with great interest. There was a gentle smile on the corner of her mouth. After he finished speaking, Xue Ruoyu chuckled and asked in return, "A battle between gentlemen? You've only exchanged 2 or 3 moves, and you've already beaten him black and blue, leaving him covered in wounds and charred like charcoal?" The great elder sent a message saying that the left protector's injuries were quite serious. He would need at least 3 to 5 years to recover. Ji Tianqing rubbed the tip of his nose and smiled awkwardly. "About this, I wasn't too sure about the left protector's strength. I didn't hold back at that time and used 60% of my strength. If I knew he was so weak, I would have only used 40% of my strength." Xue Ruoyu didn't know whether to laugh or cry. She shook her head and said, "Sai, your little junior brother is really too monstrous. You are so young, but you have the strength of a half-step primordial spirit realm. You are twice as strong as the left protector. This is really shocking and rare. Now that I think about it, when Master was your age, his strength was far inferior to yours. Ji Tianqing just smiled and didn't say anything. The burial of heaven had also said something similar. Even when Kenshin was his age, he wasn't as monstrous as him. His strength and talent had already surpassed Kenshin's. After a moment of silence, Xue Ruoyu said in a gentle tone, Tianqing, even if the left protector was injured by you, you don't have to blame yourself. I won't blame you either. Who asked him to be unrestrained and drown his sorrows with alcohol all day long? He even ended up in such a sorry state. I look down on this kind of man the most. He gave up on himself after suffering a setback and thought that he could soften my heart. Only someone like Master who would rather break than submit and press forward courageously is a true hero, a peerless swordsman. With a 3-foot Qing Feng sword in hand, he dares to call the sun and moon to change the sky. Seeing Xue Ruoyu's disdain for the old drunkard, Ji Tianqing felt sympathy for the poor old drunkard. Sect Master Xue, actually, the left protector is also a sentimental person. He is too emotional, which is why he was hurt so badly. He suffered a setback and was ridiculed by others. He would rather resign from the position of protector but still stay at the mountain gate of the hidden god sect. He can't let go of you and wants to protect you for the rest of his life. Xue Ruoyu frowned and said with anger, Tianqing, you actually know about this? It must be that talkative brat Shi Zhongjian. Chapter 1337. When Ji Tianqing saw that Xue Ruoyu was angry, he immediately comforted her and pleaded for leniency for Shi Zhongjian. After all, as a disciple of the sect, Shi Zhongjian actually dared to talk about the relationship between the sect master and left protector in private. This was a crime of offending one's superior. If it was dealt with according to the sect rules, Shi Zhongjian would have to be confined for 3 to 5 years or be severely beaten up. Luckily, Xue Ruoyu loved and valued this junior brother, Ji Tianqing, very much. After hearing his words of persuasion, Xue Ruoyu's anger dissipated. She inputted a command into the communication jade slip and sent it out. After sending the communication jade letter, she then said to Ji Tianqing, All right, I have already given the order, they will naturally know how to deal with it. Tianqing, if you have anything to prepare it now. I will help you refine the divine cauldron later. Ji Tianqing thought for a moment and nodded his head. I don't have anything to prepare, let us begin now. Xue Ruoyu nodded her head and flew to the center of the cave, landing on the wide sacrificial altar. Ji Tianqing also followed closely behind and landed beside her. The two of them stood on the sacrificial altar, and were in the midst of the turbulent flowing fire as they looked at the heavenly dipper god fire cauldron that was 10 steps away. Xue Ruoyu pointed at the divine cauldron and explained to Ji Tianqing, Tianqing, the divine cauldron has been stored here for many years and has been absorbing the heavenly wind and flowing fire. Its power has already reached its peak. The divine cauldron doesn't look big, but it has a different world and profound principles. The heavenly wind and flowing fire stored in it is enough to turn 10,000 miles of land into a sea of magma. When you refine the divine cauldron, you must not be anxious. More haste, less speed. I will teach you the art of spring wind transforming rain. First, communicate with the heavenly wind and flowing fire in the divine cauldron. After you are compatible with it, you can begin to refine the divine cauldron. Xue Ruoyu was like a kind old granny and also like Ji Tianqing's elder. She patiently explained the key to refining the divine cauldron with a very kind attitude. Ji Tianqing also didn't understand why Xue Ruoyu was so kind to him. It was as though the two of them had known each other for many years and were deeply fated. But he didn't think too much about it. He suppressed these distracting thoughts at the bottom of his heart and listened intently. An hour later, Xue Ruoyu imparted the spring wind and rain secret technique to him. He sat on the altar and cultivated. It took him a full 4 hours to master the secret technique. Then, he began to use the spring wind and rain secret technique, injecting his soul and mana into the divine cauldron to communicate with the heavenly wind and flowing fire in the divine cauldron. In the beginning, the divine cauldron rejected his magic power and divine soul and did not allow him to get close at all. Furthermore, the divine cauldron even released a powerful divine power that pushed him back 100 feet, almost causing him to fall off the altar. Although an ancient and powerful divine artifact like the heavenly dipper god fire cauldron had yet to give birth to an artifact soul, it still possessed sufficient intelligence and intelligence. This was not an inanimate object, but a divine artifact with emotions. Refining it was definitely not an easy task. Later on, with Xue Ruoyu's help, Ji Tianqing's mana and soul gradually came into contact with the divine cauldron. Only then did he truly feel how terrifying the power of the heavenly dipper god fire cauldron was. Even the sword of burial of heaven, which had now reached the level of a half-step divine artifact, could not be compared to the divine cauldron. The power of the divine cauldron was at least 5 times stronger than the sword of burial of heaven. While Ji Tianqing was shocked, he also looked forward to refining the heavenly dipper god fire cauldron as soon as possible. If he could control such a divine artifact, his combat power would increase by several times. At that time, he would be able to dominate the world and sweep everything before him. As time passed, 8 hours passed very quickly. Ji Tianqing used a full 8 hours before the divine cauldron accepted his mana and soul power. He also gradually understood the internal structure of the divine cauldron. He was extremely shocked by the precision and profoundness of the divine cauldron's array formation. Next, his soul and mana began to communicate with the heavenly wind and flowing fire in the divine cauldron. Inside the divine cauldron, there was a ball of silvery white light that wrapped around a ball of dark red liquid. That silvery white light was the heavenly wind, and the dark red liquid was the geocentric flowing fire. Although the two did not look big in reality, they were condensed 10,000 times, and their power was condensed to the limit. Only a little heavenly wind, a drop of flowing fire, could destroy 100 miles of heaven and earth. Ji Tianqing carefully controlled his soul and mana, gradually coming into contact with the heavenly wind and flowing fire, repeatedly communicating and matching with it. Xueqi stood at the side, paying attention to his and the divine cauldron's movements, afraid that an accident would happen. The two of them were focused and forgot the passage of time. At the same time, on the peak of Sunless Peak, the sun was setting. More than 10 figures were gathered in the sect's conference hall at the peak of the mountain. There were men and women among these people, and most of them were middle-aged or elderly. They were all dressed luxuriously and had extraordinary auras. The main seat in the north was Sect Master Xueqi's throne. It had always been empty. The second elder and 2 white-haired elders stood on the left side of the hall. The right guardian and the 4 elders stood on the right side of the hall. There was also a young disciple in a white robe who was standing in the middle of the hall with a face full of guilt. He looked pitiful with his head lowered, as if admitting his fault. Without a doubt, this young disciple was Xueqi. Other than him, the most eye-catching person in the entire hall was the old drunkard who was dressed in rags and had a pitch-black face. The old drunkard sat in the clean and tidy hall, his back leaning against a red pillar with gold paint. He looked miserable and on the verge of death, which made people sympathize with him. The atmosphere in the hall was very oppressive and solemn, and all the elders had ugly expressions. The white-haired elder on the left glanced at the old drunkard, and his gaze landed on Xueqi. He reprimanded in a dignified voice. "Xueqi, look at what you have done. What kind of friend have you made? He's just a kid with an unknown background, and he's obviously up to no good. You actually brought him to our sect? Have you forgotten the sect rules? If you did not invite a wolf into the house, how would the left guardian be injured like this?" Another white-haired elder also reprimanded. "Xueqi, it's okay if you are muddle-headed, but you shouldn't be so muddle-headed. That kid is powerful and has evil intentions. Who knows what kind of trouble he will cause by barging into the forbidden area. If the sect leader blames you, you will be a sinner of our sect." Seeing the 2 elders' pained expressions, the second elder hurriedly stood up and consoled them. "Elders, calm down first, don't be so nervous. I have seen Ji Tianqing before, and in my opinion, Ji Tianqing does not look like a sinister and despicable person. Perhaps he has other secrets? Moreover, Xueqi is still young and seldom goes out to explore. His knowledge and experience are shallow, and his temperament is a little simple. Even if Ji Tianqing wants to harm our sect, Xueqi was used by the villain. He did not do it on purpose." The 2 white-haired elders became even angrier when they heard her words. "Second elder. Other than this matter, you can't escape punishment either. You have seen that kid before, so why didn't you guard against him?" Chapter 1338. The 2 white-haired old men were both furious, scolding Xueqi with harsh voices and faces. Even if the second elder tried to defend Xueqi, it would be useless. The other elders were also worried and couldn't help but reprimand Xueqi. Xueqi's situation became more and more awkward. He lowered his head even more and looked like he was going to admit his mistake and accept his punishment. Seeing this, the elders didn't say anything else. One of the white-haired elders stared at Xueqi with sharp eyes and said in a deep voice, "Xueqi, the disaster has already happened. Do you admit your crime?" Xueqi just lowered his head and didn't say anything. The white-haired elder frowned and said again, "As a disciple of the sect, you have to admit your mistake. As long as you admit your mistake and reflect on it, the sect can give you a lighter punishment." The elders at the side all hurriedly signaled Xueqi with their eyes, indicating for him to quickly admit his guilt. Even Elder Lian Er sent a sound transmission to Xueqi. "Zhongjian, since things have already come to this, you don't have to insist anymore. Hurry up and admit your mistake to the elders. Everyone is just going through the motions. Master will plead on your behalf, and you won't be severely punished." Hearing this, Xueqi finally raised his head. He looked at the second elder with firm eyes and said calmly in front of everyone, "Elders, you are right. This disciple is still young and lacks experience. My temperament is also too simple. This disciple will work hard to improve in the future. However, this disciple will not admit his mistake. This disciple also doesn't believe that Big Brother Tianqing is that kind of person. He is the #1 prodigy of the continent. His status is noble and his talent is unparalleled. Why would he scheme against our hidden god sect? Why would he come all the way here to harm our sect? In short, this disciple will not believe it before the truth comes to light." Xueqi's eyes and tone were very firm. Even in the face of the elders reprimanding, he didn't back down. But before he could finish speaking, the expressions of all the elders changed, and they all revealed looks of disappointment. The two white-haired elders were so angry that their faces turned ashen. They looked like they were about to blow their beards and stare. "Ridiculous! You traitorous disciple is so stubborn. It's hopeless. Second elder, look at the good disciple you've taught. He's already possessed to such an extent. Since Xueqi refuses to plead guilty, I ask the elders to sentence him according to the laws of our sect and let him reflect on his mistakes." Everyone looked pained and hateful, and they immediately wanted to convict Xueqi. The second elder was suddenly full of anxiety. She quickly stepped forward and stood in front of Xueqi. She said to the other elders, "Elders, it's not that I'm partial to my disciple, but there are still some secrets in this matter. Please don't be impatient." The great elder had already sent a message to the sect leader to ask about the specific situation. After the great elder received the headmaster's reply, the truth of this matter would come to light. At that time, it wouldn't be too late to convict Xueqi. If Xueqi is really guilty, as his master, I can't absolve myself from the blame. When the time comes, I will also receive punishment. The second elder's tone was resolute and decisive. It was very firm and contained an unquestionable tone. When the elders saw her reaction, they couldn't continue to be overbearing. They could only cease their banners and cease their drums as they whispered softly, "Indeed, she's worthy of being the most protective elder in our sect." AI. Second elder spared no effort to protect this kid. Xueqi, how can you be worthy of your master's nurturing and protection? All right, let's do as the second elder said. Everyone wait for a moment. Everyone was silent and the main hall quickly quietened down. Not long after, a tall and sturdy white-haired old man stepped into the main hall with vigorous steps. His complexion was rosy and his eyes were bright. He was holding a jade slip in his hands and his expression was filled with joy. When the people in the main hall saw that this person had arrived, they instantly revealed an expectant expression and hurriedly went up to welcome him. "Great Elder, you're finally back." "Great Elder, has the sect leader replied to the news? What's the result? Has that kid been sentenced to death by the sect leader?" The elders turned their heads to look at the great elder, their eyes filled with anticipation. Xueqi also stared at the great elder. His fists were secretly clenched in his sleeves. He was obviously nervous and worried. The great elder walked to the middle of the main hall and stood still. He looked around and then raised his hand to signal for everyone to quiet down. "Everyone, please calm down. There's no need to be anxious or worried. I've just received the sect leader's personal order." As he spoke, he raised the jade slip in his hand. Everyone's mood became even more anxious. They looked at the jade slip expectantly and couldn't wait to know the answer. The great elder revealed a trace of a smile and continued, "We've all misunderstood that young Master Ji. Not only is he the continent's #1 prodigy, he also has no ill intentions towards our sect. Moreover, young Master Ji has a very deep relationship with our sect leader. He's our sect's distinguished guest. Young Master Ji has indeed come to our sect for a very important matter to discuss with our sect leader. The reason why he trespassed into the forbidden area was because he had no other choice. Everyone, don't worry. Hearing the first elder's words, all the elders revealed looks of astonishment and began to whisper to each other. Shi Zhongjian also revealed a look of relief. His face was filled with a proud smile. His fists in his sleeves also slowly relaxed. I knew it. Young Master Ji is definitely not that kind of person. He's a peerless prodigy and also my savior. I've never misjudged him. He muttered to himself. His tone was filled with excitement and pride. The second elder also clearly breathed a sigh of relief. His face revealed a trace of a smile. He nodded to Shi Zhongjian, indicating that everything was fine. The two white-haired elders who were angry before were now the most embarrassed. Their faces didn't look too good. The two of them didn't dare to look at Shi Zhongjian's expression. Their eyes were somewhat evasive. At this time, the great elder continued, in addition, I have a piece of good news to announce. Because of young Master Ji's arrival, our sect leader has ended his seclusion and will come out soon. When the time comes, our sect leader will gather all the elders and deacons to publicly announce something. Although I don't know what it is for now, it's definitely related to our sect's 1,000 years of foundation. Hearing his words, even a fool would know that this matter was definitely related to Ji Tianqing. Moreover, the elusive sect leader Xueqi had actually appeared because of Ji Tianqing's arrival and wanted to announce something important. This was enough to show how revered Ji Tianqing's status was. How deep was his relationship with sect leader Xueqi? Everyone recalled the scene of them cursing Ji Tianqing and criticizing Shi Zhongjian a moment ago. They instantly felt incomparably ashamed. The elders in the hall all revealed looks of shame. They were so embarrassed that they wanted to find a hole to hide in. Chapter 1339. Soon, a day had passed. It was evening again, and the dark red setting sun shone on the hidden god sect. The elders and deacons had been waiting for an entire day, full of anticipation. Everyone gathered around the conference hall, ready to welcome the sect master out of seclusion. At the same time, everyone was discussing the important news that the sect master was about to announce. What was it? When the sun slowly set and disappeared at the end of the horizon, the world gradually became dim. At this moment, the peaceful sunless peak suddenly trembled violently. The entire sunless peak was shaking, and there was a boom 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 sound coming from underground, as if a great earthquake had occurred. The elders, deacons, and disciples on the peak were all shocked, and their expressions changed dramatically. Everyone scattered in all directions, shouting in fear, not knowing what had happened. The ground on the mountain peak kept bouncing up and down as cracks appeared one after another. The cliffs halfway up the mountain crumbled, and countless rocks fell down toward the foot of the mountain. The entire sunless peak immediately burst into an uproar. The entire sect was in chaos. Fortunately, the violent shaking only lasted for a few breaths of time before it disappeared. Sunless Peak was protected by a powerful array, so it did not suffer any substantial damage. Just as everyone was still in a state of shock, flames suddenly burst out from the ground and rushed into the sky from all directions, dyeing half the sky crimson. Countless fire pillars, each as thick as a water tank, burst out from the ground in valleys around Sunless Peak, and reflected each other in the sky. For a time, the area within 1,000 miles was as red as fire, and heat waves were rolling. The elders and disciples of the hidden god sect all looked up at the sky subconsciously, and they were a little dazed and stunned as they looked at the dazzling fire that filled the sky. Under everyone's amazed gaze, the scarlet fire that filled the sky quickly condensed into 9 huge scarlet dragons that were as large as mountains. Roar! 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 A few resounding dragon roars rang out as the 9 crimson fire dragons circled in the sky, then burrowed back into the ground. Swish, swish, swish. A moment later, the 9 scarlet fire dragons disappeared from the ground. The flames that filled the sky also dissipated, and the world returned to darkness. Between the mountains and rivers around Sunless Peak, the scorching heat and the overflowing magma actually dissipated at an extremely fast speed. The elders and disciples of the hidden god sect could clearly feel that the flames and heat waves between heaven and earth had completely disappeared. The mountains, rivers, and earth within 1,000 miles of the area also gradually turned from a scorching hot state to a normal icy cold state. This kind of invisible change left everyone scratching their heads, and they began to discuss with doubts. What happened just now? Tens of thousands of fire pillars rushed into the sky and converged into 9 fire dragons, circling in the air. This is a phenomenon of heaven and earth. I understand. The sect master has come out of seclusion. That's why there's such a phenomenon. It must be because the sect master has reached the great accomplishment stage. Yes. It must be the Lord Sect Master coming out of seclusion that caused this phenomenon. Someone guessed that the heaven and earth anomaly was related to Sect Master Xueqi and shouted excitedly. Therefore, countless disciples thought so and were full of hot blood as they cheered excitedly. The atmosphere of the entire sunless peak immediately changed from panic to wild joy. Everyone was in high spirits. The cheerful atmosphere lasted for about 15 minutes before the great elder announced in a dignified tone, "All disciples, immediately get into formation. All deacons and elders, follow this seat to the conference hall and respectfully await the sect master coming out of seclusion." The numerous disciples immediately took action. More than 100 disciples consciously lined up in the square in front of the palace. More than 20 deacons and elders entered the conference hall and stood in 2 rows, waiting for sect master Xueqi to come out of seclusion. Everyone was busy for about 15 minutes before they neatly lined up in formation. At this time, a dazzling golden light soared into the sky from the bottom of Sunless Peak. Swoosh! The sacred and dazzling golden light flew into the sky and illuminated hundreds of miles like a scorching sun. Then, the golden light slowly landed on the peak of Sunless Peak and flew into the conference hall. Whether it was the disciples in the square outside the conference hall or the elders and deacons in the conference hall, they all clearly saw 2 figures in the golden light. Therefore, more than 100 disciples outside the conference hall knelt on the ground and respectfully shouted in unison, "Welcome the sect master coming out of seclusion." The elders and deacons in the main hall also bowed and shouted in unison, "Congratulations to the great success of the divine skill, sect leader." The dazzling golden light slowly faded and 2 figures, one old and one young, appeared clearly in front of everyone. The 2 stood at the head of the conference hall. On the left was a white-haired woman, the sect master of the hidden god sect, Xueqi. Standing beside her was a handsome young man in a white robe, Ji Tianqing. Xueqi's gaze swept across the conference hall before she nodded slightly to the elders and deacons. She said in a dignified tone, "Everyone please rise." "Thank you, sect master." The elders and deacons responded and then raised their heads to look at Xueqi and Ji Tianqing. A day ago, in the eyes of the elders, Ji Tianqing was a bastard who plotted against the hidden god sect and trespassed into the forbidden area. He was guilty of the most heinous crimes. At this very moment, Ji Tianqing was traveling together with Xueqi. Furthermore, he was standing beside her. Their relationship seemed to be very harmonious and close. The elders and deacons looked at Ji Tianqing with a look of disbelief and embarrassment. Xueqi turned and walked to the head of the conference hall. With the help of Ji Tianqing, she slowly sat on the luxurious and dignified throne. Then she said in a dignified tone, "I have been cultivating in seclusion for dozens of years. I have been concentrating on comprehending the divine art, but I have never succeeded. Recently, Ji Tianqing came to visit me on the orders of the human race's emperor, so I took this opportunity to come out of seclusion." The elders and deacons were stunned when they heard her words. Their faces were full of astonishment and suspicion. "Sect master, didn't you achieve great success in the divine art? You caused a heaven and earth anomaly just now." The first elder, who was the leader, couldn't help but ask Xueqi. The other elders and deacons nodded in agreement and looked at Xueqi with puzzlement. Xueqi was also stunned for a moment. Then, she smiled and explained, "How can it be so easy to comprehend a primordial soul cultivation technique? I have only been in seclusion for dozens of years. How could I have mastered the divine art? As for the heaven and earth anomaly just now, it was caused by little junior brother successfully refining the divine cauldron." Hearing this, the elders and deacons in the hall were even more dumbfounded. Their expressions became more and more interesting. "What? The heaven and earth anomaly has nothing to do with the sect master? Little junior brother? Who is the sect master's little junior brother? Could it be young Master Ji? Oh my God! Sect master and young Master Ji. Have such an unimaginable relationship? Chapter 1340. Xue Ruoyu's words made everyone dumbfounded, completely unable to make heads or tails of it. Ji Tianqing just stood beside the throne with a calm expression. He didn't say anything and didn't explain anything. Xue Ruoyu looked at everyone calmly and explained in a serious tone, "I know that everyone will find it hard to understand and believe, but Ji Tianqing is indeed my junior brother. This matter is very important. It involves the past thousands of years ago and the original intention and purpose of establishing our sect. It is our sect's biggest secret. Today, I have gathered everyone to reveal the secret of that year and announce an important decision in front of everyone." Xue Ruoyu paused for a moment. Her expression and aura became even more serious and dignified. All the elders and deacons also stared at her without blinking. Their hearts were filled with anticipation and urgency. 10,000 years ago, there was a shocking earthquake in the Vermilion Bird Mountain Range. Endless earth fire gushed out from the ground and covered the sky, burning tens of thousands of miles. Xue Ruoyu's voice sounded in the hall and lingered in everyone's ears. Her tone was low and solemn. Everyone was very quiet. They held their breaths and listened attentively. Following Xue Ruoyu's narration, the corresponding scenes appeared in everyone's minds. They imagined the situation at that time. After a full 7 minutes, Xue Ruoyu told everyone about the origin of the heavenly dipper god fire cauldron and the origin of the hidden god sect. Of course, she only briefly mentioned that she was a disciple of the Kenshin and had a relationship with Ji Tianqing. All the elders and deacons showed an expression of sudden realization. Everyone finally understood that there was such a shocking secret hidden under Sunless Peak. There was actually a divine artifact of the sect. No one would have thought that the hidden god sect was a secret force under the imperial court of the human race. What was even more unexpected was that Xue Ruoyu was a disciple of the Kenshin and Ji Tianqing was the successor of the Kenshin. There was actually such a relationship between the two. In this way, even though Ji Tianqing was the youngest person in the hall, his status was second only to Xue Ruoyu. He was incomparably honorable. Many of the elders and deacons recalled the scene when they had scolded Ji Tianqing and felt ashamed, their faces burning. In particular, the two white-haired old men lowered their heads with flushed faces, not daring to look at Ji Tianqing's expression. Ji Tianqing could not guess the complicated feelings of the crowd, so he remained silent. He stood beside Xue Ruoyu, silently communicating with and nurturing the Big Dipper God fire cauldron. At this time, Xue Ruoyu said in a dignified tone, "Since everyone has understood the meaning of our sect's existence, I will now announce a piece of news. According to His Majesty the Monarch's order, now that the great army of the devil race is sweeping across the world, the situation in the Tianxian land is already chaotic, and our people are in imminent danger. At this critical juncture, His Majesty the Monarch has entrusted Ji Tianqing with a heavy responsibility. He has entrusted the Divine Cauldron to him so that he can wield the Divine Cauldron and protect our people. As the subjects of the Imperial Court, our sect should also step forward bravely in this critical juncture to save our people and support the human race. I hereby announce that from today onwards, the Hidden God sect will be entrusted to Ji Tianqing. We must obey his orders and assist him in fighting against the devil race. From this seat down to the disciples, servants, and odd job workers of our sect, no one disrespects him. No one is allowed to disobey his orders." When Xue Ruoyu's dignified voice spread throughout the main hall, a formless mighty divine aura burst forth from her body and engulfed the entire hall. Everyone was stunned by this news. Their hearts were beating wildly, and their faces were filled with disbelief. However, everyone was intimidated by Xue Ruoyu's dignified aura. No one dared to show the slightest bit of dissatisfaction, let alone say the word no. Everyone lowered their heads and bowed respectfully. They shouted, "We will obey the sect master's order." Xue Ruoyu was satisfied with everyone's reaction. She nodded with a gratified expression and added, "Of course, Junior Brother Ji is usually busy and has no time to manage the sect's affairs. The sect's affairs, big or small, will still be managed by this seat. As long as Junior Brother Ji has any important decisions or orders, this seat and the sect will follow them without delay." All the elders and deacons bowed again with a solemn expression and said in unison, "We will obey the order." Xue Ruoyu turned her head to look at Ji Tianqing beside her, indicating for him to say a few words. Ji Tianqing nodded and said in a calm tone, "Elders and deacons, the news that Sect Master Xue announced just now was the order of His Majesty, the Emperor, and also her intention. However, there is no need for everyone to be nervous. The Hidden God sect will still be the Hidden God sect. We will still stay on Sunless Peak and continue to conserve our strength. The only change is that when I lead the army to fight against the Devil Race's army, everyone will travel with me and fight side by side. His explanation was simple and easy to understand. All the elders and deacons immediately understood and their nervous mood eased a lot. After he finished speaking, Xueqi announced the end of the meeting and waved her hand to dismiss the elders and deacons. More than 20 elders and deacons left the hall in groups of 2s and 3s with complicated feelings. They discussed the matter as they walked. Only the great elder and second elder stayed behind to report the situation to Xueqi and deal with some sect affairs. Ji Tianqing also bowed and bid farewell to Xueqi. Sect Master Xueqi, I have successfully refined the divine cauldron. You have also announced the news in public. My purpose for this trip has been achieved, so I will not impose on you any longer. Seeing that he was about to leave, Xueqi urged him to stay. Little junior brother, you have just refined the divine cauldron and your situation is not completely stable yet. To ensure that nothing goes wrong, you should rest in the sect for one night. It won't be too late to leave tomorrow. The great elder and second elder also spoke in agreement and urged him to stay. Young Master Ji, you have come in a hurry. Our sect has not yet received you properly and has been impolite. How can you leave in such a hurry? Yes, young Master Ji and Lord Sectmaster have met. How can you not spend some time together? Moreover, if you are going to lead the sect in the future, you should take this opportunity to learn more about the sect. Unable to refuse such hospitality, Ji Tianqing could only nod and agree to stay one more night in the Hidden God sect and leave early the next morning. Soon, the news spread throughout the Hidden God sect. The entire Hidden God sect knew that the white-robed youth Ji Tianqing who had just arrived the day before yesterday was actually the continent's #1 genius and the sect master's little junior brother. Moreover, after the sect master came out of seclusion, he personally announced that he would entrust the entire Hidden God sect to him. From today onwards, the Hidden God sect would be under his command. A stone stirred up 1,000 ripples. The entire Hidden God sect was in an uproar. Everyone was indescribably shocked and felt that it was inconceivable. The most excited person was none other than Xueqi. When he first heard the news, he also did not dare to believe it. He was stunned for a long time before he reacted. When he recovered from his shock, he was so excited that he danced and laughed towards the sky. He was extremely proud of himself. Chapter 1341. For the entire night, the Hidden God sect was bustling with noise and excitement. The elders, deacons, and disciples were still discussing what had happened and Xueqi's announcement. Originally, everyone had been living in seclusion and did not understand the situation in the outside world. They had never heard of Ji Tianqing's reputation and deeds. Now that he had suddenly become the leader of the Hidden God sect, the process was like a legend and a myth. Everyone was shocked and curious. Countless people were discussing and inquiring about the origin of this legendary peerless prodigy. What were his glorious deeds and past? Apart from Xueqi, no one could answer. Naturally, this warm-hearted and talkative fellow was surrounded by countless disciples. They crowded around him like stars surrounding the moon as they fought to ask him about Ji Tianqing's deeds. Even the deacons and elders would pretend to pass by casually just to hear more stories and news. Because Xueqi and Ji Tianqing had known each other for a long time, they had gone on adventures and fought side by side. He was Ji Tianqing's good friend and thus became the object of admiration and envy of countless disciples. Even the deacons and elders in the sect became more and more polite to him. Xueqi looked neither arrogant nor impatient, but he knew that this was the honor and pride that Ji Tianqing had brought to him. At night, Xueqi was busy dealing with the sect's affairs. Ji Tianqing stayed in his residence to rest. He was silently nurturing and observing the divine cauldron. The Big Dipper Godfire cauldron had been refined by him and turned into a finger-sized black cauldron that was quietly sleeping in his mind. After I refined the divine cauldron swallowed the underground magma ocean completely. The magma ocean disappeared, and the temperature within a few thousand miles of Sunless Peak dropped to normal. I don't know if this is a good or bad thing. I hope that the spirit vein of the Hidden God sect will not be destroyed after I take the divine cauldron away. Ji Tianqing muttered to himself, feeling a little worried. Now he had 3 divine items in his mind. In the middle was the golden divine soul sword, Above it was the heaven-mending pearl, and below it was the black Big Dipper Godfire cauldron. With his half-step primordial soul realm strength and the 3 divine items, his combat strength had already reached an extremely formidable level. He only wanted to return to the central state as soon as possible and report to the Emperor. Then, he would understand the situation of the Devil Race Army and rush to the battlefield as soon as possible to fight against the Devil Race Army and experts. Although he did not know the situation at the border, he could understand that the situation on the continent was getting worse and worse. Every day that passed, the danger of the Middle Continent would increase by a little bit. Countless human warriors would die on the battlefields. After I report back to the Celestial Emperor, I will investigate the situation of the northern battlefield and rush over to provide support as soon as possible. With my current strength, whether it's suppressing the Devil Army or resisting a Devil Commander powerhouse, it's all very easy. When I find a suitable opportunity, I will summon Xiao Wentian, Emperor Yi, and Sect Master Xueqi to assist me in killing the Devil Emperor. Then, we will be able to break the attack of the Devil Race. Ji Tianqing silently calculated in his heart for a while. After making up his mind, he closed his eyes and began to cultivate. The night passed in silence. The next morning, when the sun had just risen, he got up and left his residence. He met with Xue Ruoyu alone, brought Xue Ruoyu's reply to the Emperor, and quietly left the Hidden God sect. Facing the rising sun, he rode the little black dragon and soared high in the sky, rushing as fast as lightning toward the central state. The little black dragon was focused on hurrying. He sat on the back of the black dragon, refining the heavenly Dipper Godfire cauldron. Any magic treasure required a martial artist to constantly refine it to increase the power of the magic treasure. This allowed the martial artist to communicate more smoothly with the magic treasure and use it as they wished. Of course, a divine sword like the Sword of Burial of Heaven that had an artifact soul was not included in this list. 4 days passed in the blink of an eye. The little black dragon flew non-stop for 4 days, not knowing fatigue. It was currently afternoon, and the sun was warm and genial. White clouds lazily floated in the blue sky. The little black dragon was flying in the air above a lofty and steep mountain range. On the ground stood dangerous peaks that were thousands of meters tall. The birds and monsters that lived in the mountain range were all low-level monsters. They did not dare to show themselves, let alone harass or attack the little black dragon. Everything was calm and tranquil. But in front of them, a fierce gust of wind suddenly blew over, filling the sky with black clouds that rolled over. In the blink of an eye, the surrounding several hundred li was covered in thick black clouds. The warm sunlight was blocked out, and the surrounding light turned gloomy while the temperature rapidly dropped. The little black dragon keenly sensed that there was a hint of blood and death in the air. It raised its head to look at the black clouds, then narrowed its eyes and sent a message to Ji Tianqing. "Old Ji, we've probably encountered trouble." At this time, Ji Tianqing had already sensed that danger was approaching. There was no need for the little black dragon's reminder. He had already ended his cultivation and opened his eyes. He stood with his hands held behind his back, a fierce gust of wind blowing over his face, causing his white robe and his long hair to flutter in the wind. He frowned, killing intent flashing through his eyes as his lips curled into a sneer. "I smell the aura of the demon race, and it's a demon commander at the soul refinement realm. I really didn't think that those damned demon bastards would intrude into the heart of the continent and come here." As he spoke, there was a flash of black light in his hand, and the Sword of Burial of Heaven appeared. Gripping the Sword of Burial of Heaven, he expressionlessly said, "Little black dragon, they've clearly come for me. Since we've encountered them, why don't you stop and greet them? It just so happens that I've only just gained control over lightning and refined the divine cauldron, so some blind demons have come to throw their lives away. How can I let down their good intentions?" The little black dragon hurriedly slowed down and stopped high in the sky. The black clouds in the sky grew thicker and thicker, crazily surging. In 10 short seconds, the boundless black clouds had sealed off an area of 100 li, forming a pitch-black domain that suppressed Ji Tianqing and the little black dragon. The little black dragon calmly hovered in the sky, calmly observing the situation, not the slightest bit worried or panicked. Ji Tianqing proudly stood on the dragon's back, expressionlessly looking forward. Whoosh whoosh whoosh. Suddenly, 3 dark red beams of light flashed through the pitch-black demonic clouds. 3 pitch-black figures 1 zhang tall stepped out of the demonic clouds and stood 1,000 zhang in front of the little black dragon. Ji Tianqing's pupils contracted as he stared at the 3 demons. They were 2 male demons and 1 female demon. The female demon and the man in black armor stood on the left and right sides respectively, looking like attendants. The leader of the group stood in the middle, a middle-aged man in dark red armor. This person's body was as sturdy as a bear's, and he had a single eye on his forehead. He had 6 arms and 4 wings on his back. His single dark red eye stared at Ji Tianqing as a cold sneer appeared on his ugly and savage face. Chapter 1342. Hearing the familiar voice of the one-eyed devil, Ji Tianqing's brows gradually relaxed, and the sneer on his face became even more pronounced. He coldly stared at the one-eyed demon and sneered, "Sky Barbarian Demon Commander, you bastard! I was going to the northern desert to kill you myself. I didn't expect you to come to me yourself. That saves me a lot of trouble." Without a doubt, the one-eyed demon with 4 wings and 6 arms was the Sky Barbarian Demon Commander. There was a man and a woman beside him, who were his followers. They were both level 8 Sky Origin Stage Demon Kings. The Sky Barbarian Demon Commander's single eye was glowing fiercely. He shouted, "Ji Tianqing, it has been a year since we last met. You little bastard, you are still so arrogant. Could it be that you've forgotten the pain after your wounds have healed? Could it be that you've forgotten the time when you were chased by this marshal and fled like a stray dog?" Ji Tianqing was not angry. He just coldly stared at the Sky Barbarian Demon Commander. In his opinion, since the Sky Barbarian Demon Commander dared to show up, he was going to die here. Why would he get mad at a man who was going to die? "Sky Barbarian Demon Commander, 1 year ago, I was no match for you. However, things are different now. Today, I will chop off your head with my own hands to avenge you." Ji Tianqing held the sword in his hand. He was emitting a powerful and overbearing aura. The Sky Barbarian Demon Commander sneered and said, "You little bastard, how dare you say you can kill Ben Shui? How shameless! You probably don't know that Ben Shui spent half a year looking for you all over the land. He wants to kill you and take your Kenshin bloodline." Ji Tianqing finally realized that the Sky Barbarian Demon Commander had planned this all along. He glanced at the Sky Barbaric Demon Commander and secretly released his soul power, which spread out in all directions to see if there were other demons nearby. "Sky Barbarian Demon Commander, you are so arrogant to break into the land and search for me. You must have someone to rely on. There's no need to hide anymore. Quickly show yourself so that I can deal with all of you together." He suspected that the Sky Barbarian Demon Commander had helpers, who must be even more powerful demons. However, he didn't find any clues or traces after searching the surroundings with his soul energy, causing him to become even more vigilant in his heart. The Sky Barbarian Demonic Commander sensed that he was searching the surroundings, so he did not waste any more words with him. He immediately drew out a palm-sized, pitch-black demonic saber as his entire body surged with killing intent. "Little bastard, you're too arrogant. There's no need for that venerable one to act. Ben Shui can kill you, skin you alive, and pull out your tendons." As soon as he finished speaking, the Sky Barbarian Demon Commander held his demonic saber and roared angrily. Then, he swung his sword and unleashed a blood-red light that blotted out the sky. Thunderbolt Devil Kill. A 300-meter-long blood-red blade light appeared out of nowhere. It tore through the dark night like a thunderbolt, and instantly arrived in front of Ji Tianqing. Instantly, the pitch-black night sky within a 5-kilometer radius was illuminated by the dazzling bloody light. The Sky Barbarian Demon Commander's attack was fast and ruthless. He had used all of his strength as soon as he attacked, and the power of the blade light was terrifying. However, Ji Tianqing did not take it seriously at all. He took out the Sword of Burial of Heaven and slashed at the Sky Barbarian Demon Commander. Swoosh! A giant white sword with purple lightning in it tore through the night sky and slashed at the Sky Barbarian Demon Commander. Bam! The blood-red blade light and the white sword light clashed in the night sky with a loud thud. Instantly, the blood-red blade light exploded and shattered into pieces of blood-red light that filled the sky. The power of the white sword light did not diminish at all. It instantly hit the Sky Barbarian Demon Commander, who had yet to react. Bam! As a muffled sound was heard, the Sky Barbarian Demon Commander was sent flying by the white giant's sword. He let out a shrill cry. The dark red armor that he was wearing was shattered into pieces by the giant's sword, turning into a pile of scrap metal. His chest was also slashed open, and a large amount of black devil blood spurted out, revealing his ghastly white bones. Even his mouth and nose were spurting out some demonic blood. He looked extremely disheveled. The two demon lords, one male and one female, were swinging their swords aggressively, trying to attack Ji Tianqing from both sides. Suddenly seeing such a scene, the two of them were stunned on the spot. Their eyes widened in shock, revealing a deep sense of fear. They had never thought that the Sky Barbarian Demon Commander, who was extremely powerful in their eyes, would be so weak in front of Ji Tianqing. The two of them had only exchanged one blow, and the Sky Barbarian Demon Commander was sent flying with severe injuries. This was simply too terrifying. The two of them could not imagine how powerful Ji Tianqing was. With their abilities, what right did they have to attack Ji Tianqing? Just as the two of them were stunned, Ji Tianqing waved his left hand and shot out two blinding white sword lights. Swoosh! Swoosh! The two white sword lights that were 1,000 feet long pierced through the night sky like lightning and attacked the two of them. The two of them were instantly filled with fear, and their eyes were filled with fear and despair. They only hesitated for a moment before they turned around and ran desperately. They only wanted to get out of this realm and hide as far away as possible. After all, a battle of this level was not something that the two of them could participate in. In fact, they were not even qualified to watch the battle. However, the two white sword lights had locked onto their soul aura. No matter where they ran, they would not be able to escape. Bam! Bam! In the next moment, the white sword lights hit the two of them, and there were two loud thuds. The burly bodies of the two demon kings were killed on the spot by the sword light. They exploded into pieces that filled the sky, and a large rain of blood fell down. Ji Tianqing did not stop after killing the two demon lords. He swung his divine sword and chased after the Sky Barbarian Demon Commander. The Sky Barbarian Demon Commander had just retreated 1,000 feet away and finally stopped. He quickly performed a secret skill and used the power of the Dark Realm to suppress his injuries. Luckily, Ben Shuai was prepared and had the crimson armor to protect him. Otherwise, Ben Shuai would have been cut in half by that sword. Damn Ji Tianqing. I haven't seen him for a year. How did his abilities reach such a level? Even Ben Shuai is no match for him. Is his abilities comparable to the demon commanders? These thoughts flashed through the Sky Barbarian Demon Commander's mind. He was filled with fear and disbelief. However, at this moment, Ji Tianqing charged over with murderous intent. Sky Barbarian Demon Commander, it's time for you to die. You had an upper-grade soul weapon to protect you just now, so you could still survive. Let's see how you're going to survive this time. Ji Tianqing shouted coldly. He swung the Burial of Heaven again and stabbed the Sky Barbarian Demon Commander. Stab! Swish! A cold light that was condensed to the extreme burst out from the Dark Heaven's Burial sword and disappeared in a flash. In the next moment, the cold light traveled 10 miles and appeared in front of the Sky Barbarian Demon Commander's chest. It exploded. Bam! A dazzling white light exploded like a mushroom cloud, rising into the air and illuminating the area within a radius of dozens of miles. Chapter 1343. Bang! With a heaven-shaking explosion, a dazzling ball of white light soared into the sky of the dark domain. Violent shockwaves spread out in all directions, sweeping across a radius of 100 li as they viciously battered against the walls of the dark domain. However, the dark domain was unbreakable, still releasing a powerful suppressive energy that sealed off the area for 100 li. A few moments later, the dazzling white light that blotted out the sky gradually dissipated. The Heaven Barbaric Demon Commander's figure had vanished. His fleshly body and soul had already been blasted into smithereens and dissipated between heaven and earth. The dark domain gradually calmed down. Ji Tianqing stood alone in the darkness. The battle was already over. However, he did not relax. He maintained his vigilance and wariness as he released his soul to search the surroundings. At this moment, something strange happened in the night sky 20 li behind him. The little black dragon remained in that part of the night sky, vigilantly observing its surroundings. However, a giant claw condensed from black light suddenly extended out of the darkness and silently descended from the sky, viciously swiping at it. By the time it sensed the danger and wanted to turn and flee, it was already too late. Bang! The giant black claw viciously slammed into the little black dragon with a dull thud. The terrifyingly great strength caused its body to twitch, and countless of its bones let out crisp cracking sounds. It fell from the sky and viciously slammed into the ground. Boom! A giant crater appeared in the ground that had long since been reduced to rubble, sending dirt and stone flying into the air. Cracks appeared all around the crater like a spider web. The little black dragon lay at the bottom of the crater, more than half of its body buried in dust. The parts of its body that were exposed were bent at strange angles. It was obvious that even its dragon bones had been broken. There were also many places where its dragon scales had shattered and fallen off, revealing bloody wounds and white bones. The little black dragon had suffered significant injuries. It struggled several times before it managed to crawl out of the crater. At this moment, the giant black claw hidden in the darkness silently appeared above the crater and viciously swiped at the little black dragon. The little black dragon had nowhere to hide and was about to be struck by the giant black claw. At that time, its injuries would be even more severe, and its true dragon body might even be destroyed. At this critical moment, a crescent-shaped swordlight that was thousands of feet long suddenly tore through the dark night sky and slashed at the huge black claw. "Don't be so arrogant, demon!" As the blazing white swordlight slashed down, Ji Tianqing's furious roar filled with killing intent resounded. Boom! The huge crescent-shaped swordlight struck the huge black claw with a loud bang, which shook the 9 heavens. Boom! The huge black claw shattered on the spot, disintegrating into tens of thousands of blood-red fragments, scattering in the sky. Ji Tianqing flew over as fast as a streak of light. He flew to the top of the pit and unleashed a huge golden palm, grabbing the little black dragon out of the pit. "Little black dragon, how are your injuries?" He was filled with worry as he sent a sound transmission to ask about the little black dragon's injuries. The little black dragon hurriedly replied in a rather weak voice, "Old Ji, there's no need to worry about me. I won't die. Be careful." Ji Tianqing nodded and hurriedly put it back into the sword world. "Rest at ease and recover. I'll deal with this demon." At the same time, the fragments of black light in the sky began to dance like butterflies, rapidly gathering together. Whoosh, whoosh, whoosh. With a flash of black light, the fragments of black light once more condensed into a savage monster that was thousands of feet tall. Its appearance was that of a primordial beast. Its body was thick and muscular, its head as flat as a python's, and it had a wide and bloody mouth. It had 4 thick limbs and a long dragon tail. 2 pairs of black wings had also sprouted from its back. This was a massive magical beast whose name was unknown. It exuded an extremely powerful aura and was shrouded in a layer of dark green light. The most terrifying thing was that its strength had reached the half-step essence soul realm. Ji Tianqing held the sword of burial of heaven and stepped into the dark night sky. He stared at it coldly and thought to himself, could this black giant demon be the supremacy that the sky barbaric demon commander mentioned? It actually has the strength of an essence soul realm? No wonder it could severely injure the little black dragon with 1 claw. However, since when did such a powerful being appear in the demon race? He knew very well that other than the ancient demon emperor, demon commander Ming Yi was the strongest. However, demon commander Ming Ye's strength had not reached the half-step essence soul realm. The black giant demon in front of him was far more powerful than demon commander Ming Yi, and he was unfamiliar with it. The black giant demon stood in the night sky. Its body seemed to have fused with the darkness, becoming faintly discernible. Its huge red eyes stared at Ji Tianqing. Its bloody mouth opened and closed, emitting a bone-chilling voice. "Ji Tianqing, you don't know me, but I've long heard of your reputation and deeds. I've long wanted to tear you into pieces. In order to kill you with my own hands, I left the northern desert and crossed the entire Tianxian continent to find you here. Tonight, you will die without a doubt. There is no escape." The black giant demon's voice was as cold as 10,000-year-old ice. It was emotionless and sounded like the voice of death from hell. When Ji Tianqing heard its words, he frowned and pondered for a while. Suddenly, a thought flashed across his mind. In the demon race, other than the ancient demon emperor, who else dares to call themselves emperor? Could this guy be the ghost emperor? He knew that before the ancient demon emperor returned to the northern desert, the demon race had split into several forces. One of the more powerful forces was the thousands of demon tribes led by the ghost emperor. 1,000 years ago, the ghost emperor was a demon commander under the ancient demon emperor. His status and strength were higher than demon commander Ming Ye's. However, 600 years ago, the the Ghost Emperor fell out with Demon Commander Ming Yi and the others. He established his own force, roped in many experts and tribes, and called himself the Ghost Emperor. Until 2 years ago, when the ancient Demon Emperor returned to the northern desert, the Ghost Emperor had no choice but to obey the Demon Emperor's orders. When he thought of this, Ji Tianqing came to a sudden realization. He stared coldly at the black giant demon and said in a low voice, "You are the Ghost Emperor who established his own force?" The black giant demon nodded and said coldly, "That's right. You guessed my identity so quickly. It seems like you know a lot about my race. Know yourself and know your enemy, and you will be victorious in every battle." Ji Tianqing sneered and said in a playful tone, "If not, how could I sneak into the heavenly demon palace and escape the northern desert alive?" The Ghost Emperor also sneered and exuded an endless chill of death. "Since you know so much about my race, you should know that the purpose of my visit is for the Kenshin bloodline." Chapter 1344. Of course, Ji Tianqing knew that the Ghost Emperor was determined to win this time and would definitely not leave the matter at that. However, he was fearless. With his left hand behind his back and his right hand holding the Sword of Burial of Heaven, he exuded a domineering aura. If this was a few months ago, with your strength, you might have been able to get what you wanted. But now, I'm sorry. Not only will you be disappointed, but you will also lose your life. The Ghost Emperor instantly opened his bloody mouth and let out a cold and sinister laugh. "Ha ha ha. The rumors are indeed true. You little bastard are truly arrogant to the point of being out of control. Since you are so stubborn, then this emperor will personally kill you and extract your bloodline. 10,000 ghosts kill gods." After saying that, he twisted his body and flapped his 2 huge wings. Then, green light covered the sky and covered the earth. Tens of thousands of green dots of light fell from the night sky. Then, each light spot emitted a dazzling green light and turned into a terrifying ghost face the size of a house. Swoosh, swoosh, swoosh. On the desolate land that was like a wasteland, countless white skeletons appeared. In just a few breaths, tens of thousands of tall and terrifying white skeletons appeared in the dark realm, forming a sea of white skeletons. Ji Tianqing looked around and saw that each of the white skeletons was crystal clear. Their bones glowed like jade and were filled with powerful energy. Tens of thousands of skeletons were holding weapons made from blue soul flames. They flew up into the sky and charged at Xueqi. Without a doubt, those tens of thousands of white skeletons were not ordinary skeletons. They were all elites who had been refined by the Ghost Emperor and had the strength of Sky Origin Realm. No one would be able to withstand the attacks of tens of thousands of Sky Origin Realm elites. They would definitely be torn into pieces. Only the primordial Soul Realm elites had a chance of survival. Under the Ghost Emperor's control, the tens of thousands of white skeletons and tens of thousands of terrifying ghost faces swarmed towards Ji Tianqing like a swarm of bees, immediately drowning his figure. Ji Tianqing, enjoy the feast of despair and death. Heh. The Ghost Emperor stood in the dark night sky and looked down at the battlefield with a smug smile. Ji Tianqing was in the dark sky, completely submerged by the white skeletons and ghost faces. He was surrounded by skeletons and ghost faces from all directions. All kinds of blue soul flames and dark green flames were pouring over like a flood from the sky. His entire body lit up with dazzling golden light, forming a magic power shield. Furthermore, the golden light shield was surrounded by dense purple lightning, which looked like electric snakes slithering around it. Whenever the blue soul fire and the dark green flame came in contact with the shield, they would be blocked and shattered by the lightning. Then they would turn into a torrent and spread in all directions. Ji Tianqing also swung the Burial of Heaven sword, slashing out streaks of lightning-infused sword light that wildly hacked at the surrounding skeletons and ghost faces. Bang 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 bang. A series of muffled booms erupted, reverberating madly in the dark domain, deafening to the ears. Countless white skeletons were shattered by the sword light, shattering into countless bone fragments that rained down from the night sky and onto the ground below. Even the ever-changing ghostly faces were twisted and deformed by the lightning arcs, collapsing and dispersing one after another. Although those white skeletons and ghost faces could not hurt Ji Tianqing in a short period of time, there were too many of them. However, there were simply too many of them. There was simply no way to kill them all. Therefore, Ji Tianqing opened the exit of the Sword World and summoned Ancestor 3 Absolutes, the Jinshan King, and Qian Yu to fight side by side with him. As soon as Ancestor 3 Absolutes appeared, He was surrounded by dozens of white skeletons. All kinds of blue soul flames formed saber light, sword light, and fire pillars that blotted out the sky and covered his body. He was furious and immediately summoned the body of the green light treasure tree, releasing tens of thousands of sharp green light blades that shot wildly in all directions. Whoosh 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 whoosh. The tens of thousands of sharp green light blades were as dense as a torrential rain of arrows, instantly shattering the surrounding white skeletons into pieces. The area within a radius of 10 miles was instantly cleared by him, becoming empty. His body quickly grew, turning into a towering ancient tree that was thousands of feet tall, extending hundreds of millions of branches, standing tall in the dark night sky. White skeletons and ghost faces from all directions madly rushed over, besieging him. He waved hundreds of millions of branches, fiercely whipping those skeletons and ghost faces, smashing those skeletons and ghost faces one after another. Then, the Jinshan King rushed out with his dark golden war hammer. Seeing the skeletons and ghost faces in all directions, he roared angrily and madly waved his dark golden war hammer, smashing those skeletons and ghost faces without restraint. Huge golden hammer shadows that were as large as mountains fiercely smashed those skeletons and ghost faces, making loud muffled sounds. But all the skeletons and ghost faces that were hit by the hammers were destroyed without exception. Qian Yu's method was even more violent. She directly revealed her 1,000-foot-long heavenly fox body, releasing shocking hurricanes, ice and lightning, stirring up a shocking storm in the sea of skeletons. With the help of the crowd, the sea of skeletons and ghost faces that filled the sky rapidly reduced the number of skeletons and ghost faces. Ji Tianqing also continuously slashed out dense sword light, waving his palms to release waves of lightning, quickly destroying those skeletons and ghost faces. In just 20 breaths, the tens of thousands of white skeletons and ghost faces were wiped out by the crowd. Witnessing this scene, the Ghost Emperor frowned, his eyes becoming extremely gloomy. Despicable little bastard. He has the help of so many soul-refining realm powerhouses. No wonder he can live until today. The Ghost Emperor murmured in a cold tone, his body surging with soaring murderous intent. He released a powerful divine soul power, controlling the entire dark realm, crazily accumulating power. The white skeletons scattered in the dark realm, as well as various blue and dark green soul fires, all turned into a flood of colors, gathering in his body. When his power was accumulated to the peak, he roared with murderous intent. Ji Tianqing, go to hell! As he roared, he opened his mouth and spat out a blue and dark green pillar of fire, descending from the sky toward Ji Tianqing. It was a huge pillar of fire that was 100 feet thick, containing a terrifying power that could destroy one's divine soul. Ji Tianqing immediately swung his sword, slashing out a crescent-shaped sword light, fiercely toward the pillar of fire. Swing the sword. Bang! The sword light slashed at the fire pillar with a loud bang, producing a dull and loud sound. The pillar of fire immediately collapsed, exploding into a large number of blue and dark green soul fires, spreading in all directions. Old Ancestor 3 Severing was closer to the tree. The 3,000 zhang tall tree was immediately infected by the soul fire. Over 100,000 branches were set ablaze. The Golden Mountain King and Qian Yu were also affected, being engulfed by the mysterious and terrifying soul fires. Immediately, they showed a painful expression, letting out muffled groans and screams. Chapter 1345. Ji Tianqing's expression changed when he saw that Patriarch Sanju, Golden Mountain King, and the others were injured. He immediately understood that this was the Ghost Emperor's scheme. The Ghost Emperor's target was not him, but Patriarch Sanju, Golden Mountain King, and the others. As expected, the Ghost Emperor opened his mouth again and spat out 3 more soul fire light pillars towards Golden Mountain King and the others. Swish! 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 The 3 soul fire light pillars were extremely fast. They pierced through the night sky like lightning and arrived in front of everyone. Patriarch Sanju, Golden Mountain King, and Qian Yu were unable to dodge and were about to be engulfed by the soul fire light pillars. At the critical moment, Ji Tianqing did not hesitate to use his secret technique and summoned the 7 astral soul magic swords. Swish! The 7 astral soul magic swords flew out and immediately turned into blazing white giant swords that were hundreds of feet long. They slashed towards the 3 soul fire light pillars. At that moment, the astral soul magic swords were extremely fast. They tore through the night sky like white lightning and caught the Ghost Emperor off guard. Bam! Bam! bam, 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 bam. With a few dull explosions, the 3 soul fire light pillars were slashed apart by the astral soul magic swords. They exploded into soul fire and scattered in the dark night sky. This time, Ji Tianqing was prepared. Before the soul fire could engulf the green light treasure tree, he put Patriarch Sanju into the sword world. Then, he used his fastest speed to save Qian Yu and Golden Mountain King. Everyone's astral soul was injured. Although it was not fatal, they still needed to recuperate in time. After Ji Tianqing sent them into the sword world, they immediately began to recuperate. In the Dark Realm, only Ji Tianqing and the Ghost Emperor were left. It was proven that martial artists below the primordial soul realm could not interfere in the fight between them. Only they themselves could determine the final victor. Swish! 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 The 7 blazing white astral soul magic swords flew back to Ji Tianqing's side and floated behind him. Every astral soul magic sword was dazzling white light. They emitted powerful astral soul energy and sharp sword intent. The Ghost Emperor stared at the 7 astral soul magic swords and observed them carefully. Suddenly, he had an epiphany. 7th tier soul cultivation realm? 7 swords condensed from divine souls? Didn't all human experts condense their divine soul dharma eyes? This damned bastard, what kind of evil cultivation technique did he cultivate? He actually managed to condense 7 divine soul swords? That's not right. That little bastard is only at the 7th level of the soul refinement realm. Why is his battle prowess so strong? The more the ghostly emperor thought about it, the more astonished he felt. Ji Tianqing didn't care about its shock. He unleashed all of his power and used a secret technique. Soul Slayer. His left hand formed hand seals and manipulated the 7 swords to form a 7-star sword array, which pressed down on the Ghost Emperor. Swish swish. The 7 divine soul magic swords instantly expanded, transforming into giant swords of white light that were over 1,000 feet long. They even transformed into tens of thousands of white sword lights. The profound and complicated 7-star sword formation was instantly formed. It covered a radius of 10 miles and suppressed the ghostly emperor within it. Swish! Swish! Millions of sword lights flickered intensely as they shuttled back and forth in the night sky, frantically trying to strangle the ghostly emperor. Within the sword lights, there were purple lightning arcs that crackled incessantly. Lightning was the world's most masculine and ferocious power. It was also the nemesis of evil spirits. On the other hand, sword lights were the sharpest and most powerful power. They could penetrate and cut through the ghostly emperor's body and soul. The power of this soul slayer was pushed to the extreme by Ji Tianqing. Even a first-level essence soul realm expert would have to be wary of it. The ghostly emperor was in a perilous situation and was in imminent danger. The speed of the sword lights and lightning was extremely fast. However, the ghostly emperor's body was as huge as a mountain. Being suppressed within a radius of 10 miles, it was extremely difficult for him to dodge. Bam! 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 Following a series of explosions, numerous wounds appeared on the ghostly emperor's majestic body. Demonic blood splattered everywhere. Furthermore, countless lightning arcs struck the ghostly emperor, leaving countless pitch-black wounds on its body. Black smoke rose from the wounds. The excruciating pain made the ghostly emperor tremble as it roared furiously. The ghostly emperor immediately channeled a vast amount of dermic powers and condensed a blue shield to block the attacks of the sword lights and lightning. The ghostly emperor even waved its huge claws with all its might and used its ultimate secret techniques. It shot out various soul fires and sword lights in a vain attempt to break through the 7-star sword formation seal. The 7-star sword formation continued to attack the ghostly emperor. Rumbling sounds could be heard from within the sword formation and reverberated in the dark realm. After about 100 breaths, the power of the 7-star sword formation gradually weakened. Only then did the ghostly emperor have the opportunity to break free. He finally broke through the 7-star sword formation, causing the thousands of sword lights to collapse and shatter into fragments that scattered across the night sky. Ji Tianqing hurriedly controlled the 7 astral soul magic swords to fly back to his side and disappear into his mind. The ghostly emperor roared furiously. He struggled to break through the fragments of sword lights that filled the sky and returned to the dark realm. At this point in time, he was already riddled with wounds and his injuries were extremely miserable. His entire body was covered with thousands of wounds of different sizes. One of his 2 pairs of wings had been crushed. A large piece of flesh on his back had also disappeared, leaving only a rugged skeleton. Even the top of his head had been charred black by the lightning and was filled with charred holes. Ah! Ji Tianxing, you bastard! You deserve to be hacked into 1,000 pieces. I will tear you into pieces and grind your bones to dust. The ghostly emperor was infuriated. He had completely gone mad and had gone berserk. He roared and cursed hysterically. In the past 600 years, he had never suffered such miserable injuries. With his terrifying strength, almost no one could beat him to such a state. He stared at Ji Tianxing with bloodshot eyes. His eyes were burning with a raging blood fire. The monstrous anger in his chest exploded as if he wanted to burn the heavens. Heavenly ghost chasing sun. The ghostly emperor opened his bloody mouth and roared into the sky. Immediately after, his entire body was burning with blue soul fire. His body was also twisting and changing violently. In the short span of 10 breaths, his gigantic body had shrunk from 1,000 feet tall to 1,000 feet tall. His appearance had also undergone a huge change. From a ferocious ancient beast, he had become a giant burning with blue flames. At this point in time, he was 1,000 feet tall demon with a body as thin as a bamboo pole. His entire body was blue and green. He no longer had legs. His body floated in the night sky. However, he had grown 4 long bamboo-like arms. His black nails were as sharp as blades. His head was also covered by his long purple hair. There was no way to see his face clearly. Only a pair of green eyes could be seen through the messy hair. His body became a little blurry. It was as if he was real and illusory. This was the legendary demon that was comparable to an Asura, the heavenly ghost. The heavenly ghost chasing sun was the ghostly emperor's forbidden technique. Once this technique was used, his combat strength would increase exponentially. For an hour, he would be comparable to a first-tier Essence Soul Realm expert. However, using this forbidden technique would consume 100 years of his cultivation and greatly damage his vitality. Unless he had no other choice, he would not use this secret technique. Chapter 1346. On the surface, the ghostly emperor in his sky ghost form was far less ferocious than the giant beast's true body from before. However, when Ji Tianxing sensed the energy waves emitted from its body, his expression turned grave. That mysterious and cold aura seemed to have come from the abyss of hell, causing one's soul to tremble and their entire body to feel as if it had been frozen. The formless power of death and curse emanated from its body and permeated the dark domain. Ji Tianxing had no choice but to circulate his energy to condense a shield and borrow the power of the heaven-mending orb to resist. At this moment, the ghost emperor slowly raised his head. His pair of dark green eyes revealed a chilling aura. Ji Tianxing, I've underestimated you before, but you're still going to die today. You forced me to do this. I haven't used this forbidden technique for 200 years. Today, you should be proud that you died under this emperor's ultimate technique. The ghost emperor's voice was gloomy and cold like ice, and it contained dense resentment and hatred. It caused one's entire body to go cold and their hair to stand on end. As it spoke, its entire body lit up with a dim blue brilliance, burning with dark green flames. It slowly raised its slender arms and stretched out its 10 blade-like nails, grabbing at Ji Tianxing. Swish! Swish! Suddenly, 10 dark blue light blades shot out from its 10 fingers, attacking as fast as lightning. In the blink of an eye, 10 zhonglong light blades arrived in front of Ji Tianxing, intending to kill him on the spot. At this critical moment, he had no time to swing his sword and counterattack. He could only extend his golden wings and wrap himself up. Wings of the Golden Rock. Pang pang pang. The 10 dark blue light blades struck the golden wings one after another, producing a series of dull and loud noises. Although those dark blue blades of light were specifically designed to restrain the divine soul, they also contained a terrifying force of impact. Ji Tianxing was sent flying back on the spot, tumbling 10 miles away. However, the ghostly emperor's figure flashed as he teleported over 10 miles away, instantly catching up to Ji Tianxing. This time, it raised its 4 arms and waved its 4 palms, shooting out 20 blue light blades towards Ji Tianxing like a rain of arrows. Ji Tianxing didn't have time to dodge and was hit by the blue light blade again. Pung 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 pung. Another series of muffled sounds rang out, and he was sent flying again, landing 10 miles away. The Ghost Emperor teleported another 10 miles away and rushed to the front with his fastest speed, stopping Ji Tianqing. It crazily waved its four evil arms and slapped Ji Tianqing with a series of loud bangs. Ji Tianqing was sent flying back and forth like a ball, shuttling back and forth in the dark domain. Fortunately, he had the protection of the golden wings, which prevented him from being injured by the Ghost Emperor. However, his face had turned pale from the impact, and his internal organs had suffered some damage. Moreover, the mysterious power of the dark blue blade had invaded his mind and corroded his soul. He had no time to care about the Ghost Emperor's ferocious attacks, and hurriedly activated the power of the heaven-mending orb to heal his soul and resist the corrosion of the dark blue blade. Taking advantage of this opportunity, the Ghost Emperor had already attacked him 6 times, from the northwest to the southeast of the dark domain, flying a total of 70 to 80 miles away. The power of the golden wings was greatly depleted, and their golden light dimmed. Their defensive power had also decreased sharply by 60%. Heavenly Ghost Soul Destruction / The Ghost Emperor roared as he unleashed his most powerful attack, unleashing his most terrifying killing move. It waved its 4 slender arms and ruthlessly slashed out 4,000-meter-long dark blue light blades towards Ji Tianqing. The 4 dark blue light blades gathered and fused into a 1,000-meter-long giant blade. It turned dark blue and was so condensed that it seemed to be solid. Pang! Following a muffled explosion, Ji Tianqing was once again struck by the dark blue giant blade. He flew back in a sorry state and crashed into the barrier of the dark domain. This time, the power of the golden wings was completely depleted, and they became dim. They retracted back into his body and could no longer be used. He stood in the dark night sky with his body bent over and coughed a few times. Blood flowed out from the corner of his mouth. A layer of hazy dark blue brilliance enveloped his body, and it was still constantly corroding his soul and the golden swords. His consciousness was a little dizzy and blurry, and he was temporarily unable to counterattack. He constantly activated the power of the heaven-mending orb to devour and purify the dark blue soul fire. The Ghost Emperor stood 10 miles away and looked at him coldly. He sneered in a mocking tone, "Ji Tianqing, I have already said that you will definitely die today. How about it? Have you tasted despair now?" Ha ha ha. The Ghost Emperor sneered sinisterly. His entire body emitted an ice-cold aura of death, as well as a soaring murderous intent. Ji Tianqing lowered his head and silently cleared the dark blue soul fire. He did not open his mouth to reply. The Ghost Emperor was also not in a hurry to attack. He looked at him with a look of disdain, as if he had everything under control. "Ji Tianqing, accept your fate. Even if you have the Kenshin blood and divine weapons, it is useless in front of me. Obediently hand over the divine sword and let me draw out your Kenshin blood. Perhaps I can give you a dignified death. If you are stubborn, I can only let you experience the power of the Heavenly Ghost's secret technique and let you die in pain and despair." Ji Tianqing slowly raised his head and stared at him coldly. He asked in a low voice, "Ghost Emperor, when the ancient demon emperor wanted to seize my Kenshin blood, it was to restore his vitality and strength, as well as to remove the bloodline shackles of the demon race. Now that the bloodline shackles of the demon race have been removed, the demon emperor's strength must have also recovered. Why do you still want to seize my Kenshin blood?" This question made the Ghost Emperor's body shake. He was obviously stunned. After a moment of silence, he laughed sinisterly. "Ha! Since you are already bound by my soul-devouring demon fire, you will definitely die today. I am not afraid to tell you the truth. His Majesty the Demon Emperor is carrying out a grand plan. This has been the wish of my race for thousands of years. Once the plan succeeds, my race will return to its peak and dominate the profound sky continent. For the plan to succeed, not only does he need your Kenshin blood, he also needs the other 4 divine items." Hearing this, Ji Tianqing suddenly frowned. A cold light flashed across his eyes. Seeing his expression change, the Ghost Emperor laughed proudly. "Haha, do you think our target is only you? Too naive. The blood god's sons refined by His Majesty the Demon Emperor have already gone to various parts of the continent to carry out missions to seize those divine items. If nothing unexpected happened, they should have already succeeded. The divine hidden sect in the Vermilion Bird Mountains should have long been reduced to ashes and no longer exists, right? How is it? Are you very angry and heartbroken?" Ha ha ha. The Ghost Emperor laughed mockingly. He was very proud and carefree. Ji Tianqing's expression turned even uglier. A look of disbelief flashed across his eyes. Chapter 1347. Ji Tianqing did not expect that the demon emperor would not only deal with him, but also send the blood god's son to attack the hidden god sect. The hidden god sect is hidden in the Vermilion Bird Mountain range, so how could they be discovered by the demon race? Could it be that the divine artifact that the demon race wants is the divine cauldron guarded by the hidden god sect? Thinking of this, his heart was filled with anxiety and worry, and his whole body was bursting with murderous intent. Ghost Emperor! Didn't you deliberately investigate and search for the divine cauldron guarded by the hidden god sect? I'll tell you the truth, I just left the hidden god sect and obtained the divine cauldron. Now that the divine cauldron is in my hands, those blood god sons will be useless even if they go to the hidden god sect. Let them come for me. Ji Tianqing knew very well how powerful and destructive the blood god sons were. Moreover, the hidden god sect was big and had many disciples. Once the blood god sons sneaked into the sunless peak and released the power of calamity, the entire sect would be destroyed and countless people would die. Moreover, the people of the hidden god sect did not know much about the blood god sons and did not know how to restrain them. Therefore he told the truth, hoping that the ghost emperor would spread the news and attract the blood god sons. However, Ji Tianqing did not expect the ghost emperor to laugh coldly. Ha 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 ha. You are so stupid and pitiful. Do you think that the demon emperor sent out the strongest blood god sons just to steal a divine artifact? If it's not to steal the divine cauldron, then what divine artifact does the hidden god sect have? Ji Tianqing immediately frowned and revealed a trace of doubt. The ghost emperor did not want to say anything more and sneered. Kid, you are already a dead man, so why are you still talking so much nonsense? As soon as he finished speaking, he used an ultimate secret art. Blue flames surged out of his body and condensed into hundreds of mysterious and strange seal characters that suppressed Ji Tianqing. Soul Seal Art. The ghost emperor kept on waving his 4 arms, drawing profound arcs in the night sky and forming mysterious hand seals. The hundreds of ancient seal characters, supported by the power of the seal, pressed down on Ji Tianqing one after another, their power increasing continuously. Ji Tianqing was worried about the safety of the hidden god sect, so he didn't waste any more time. He didn't even bother to remove the blue soul fire in his body. Without any hesitation, he raised his left palm and used his most powerful technique, releasing a golden divine flame. God-slaying spear. A golden divine flame burst forth from his left palm and condensed into a 30-meter-long golden divine spear. It instantly pierced through the gloomy night sky and pierced towards the ghost emperor. Swish! With a sharp sound of breaking through the air, the god-slaying spear instantly pierced through 5 miles of the night sky, piercing through the numerous deep blue seal characters and ruthlessly stabbing into the ghost emperor. Boom! The ghost emperor was not prepared at all. Ji Tianqing, who was already heavily injured, was still able to release such a terrifying ultimate move. Caught off guard, it was struck by the god-slaying spear, and its body trembled as it was sent flying. Boom! The god-slaying spear pierced into the ghost emperor's body and suddenly exploded. It was like a giant golden mushroom cloud that spread out in all directions. Instantly, a radius of 15 miles was enveloped by a blinding golden light. The entire dark realm was illuminated. The ghost emperor's 1,000-meter-tall sky ghost body was also shattered by the golden divine flame on the spot. It turned into a sea of blue flames that covered the sky and spread out in all directions. The dazzling golden light shockwave spread out like a tide and quickly engulfed the entire dark realm. The deathly cold aura that filled the dark realm was dispersed by the golden divine flame in the blink of an eye. At the same time, Ji Tianqing also used the sword soul battle technique. He passed through dozens of deep blue seal characters and broke through the suppression of the soul seal art. He held the sword of burial of heaven in his hand and rushed to the center of the dark realm. The blue soul fire that was scattered in the night sky quickly gathered together and wanted to reform its body. However, Ji Tianqing didn't give the ghost emperor a chance to reform its body. He immediately used all his strength to execute the thunder attraction art. His hands formed hand seals and released a sky full of thunderbolts that blasted out in all directions. Kaboom! At least 100 purple thunderbolts that were as thick as an arm shot down like a rain of arrows and blasted those soul fireballs that had gathered together. Only a series of dull bangs and crackling sounds of thunder could be heard. Those soul fireballs exploded one after another, and were completely annihilated by the thunderbolts. The earth-shattering thunderbolts continued to blast for 10 breaths of time. There were at least 10,000 of them. The blue soul fireballs that were scattered in the dark realm were all blasted and dispersed by the thunderbolts. Finally they turned into nothingness. After 10 breaths of time, not a single trace of blue soul fire could be seen in the dark realm. The Ghost Emperor's sky ghost body was completely destroyed. Not even his divine soul was left. He was gone forever. It was only then that Ji Tianqing stopped casting the art. His face was pale and he was panting. The sky ghost body was too powerful. In order to completely destroy the Ghost Emperor, he had used up more than half of his thunderbolts. He only felt that his dermic powers were empty and he was a little dizzy. He stood in the dark night sky and rested for a full 15 minutes before he completely cleared the blue soul fire in his body. Then, he took 2 soul-level elixirs to recover his dermic powers. When he had recovered more than half of his strength, he held the Sword of Burial of Heaven and used the ultimate move, Sky-Splitting Sword, to cut open a crack in the dark realm. Swoosh! His figure flashed and he passed through the crack and escaped from the dark realm. When he left the dark realm, the pressure on his body was greatly reduced. It was as if he had been reborn. He breathed in the cold air of the night sky. It was already late at night. The night sky was dark. He flew into the night sky without stopping and turned around to fly back to the Vermilion Bird Mountain range. While he was rushing back, he was silently praying, "I hope that those blood gods haven't attacked the hidden god sect yet. I hope that sect master Xueqi can stop them. Please don't cause a disaster." In order to rush back to the hidden god sect as soon as possible, he used the ultimate move of sword kinesis flight. He stepped on the divine soul magic sword and sped through the sky. With the passage of time, a whole day passed quickly. On the morning of the 3rd day, he finally rushed back to the Vermilion Bird Mountain range. He was about to reach Sunless Peak. When the sun rose, the red rays of the sun shone on the mountains. It was very quiet and peaceful. However, when Ji Tianqing was about to reach Sunless Peak, he was stunned by the scene in front of him. The sight of Sunless Peak and the surrounding 50 kilometers caused his expression to change dramatically. His eyes were filled with anxiety and worry. He saw that several mountains within 50 kilometers of Sunless Peak had collapsed. Piles of black scorched earth and ruins were piled up at the foot of the mountain. Everything within 50 kilometers had been turned into ruins. Countless cracks had appeared on the ground, and black smoke was still rising in spirals. Sunless Peak, which was thousands of meters tall, also had several huge cracks. More than half of it had collapsed. From the peak to the middle of the mountain, there was a huge crack that looked like a natural chasm. It seemed to have been split open by a sword. In the past, there were dozens of palaces and mansions on the mountain peak. It was an ancient and solemn scene. But now, the entire mountain peak was in ruins. Chapter 1348. The sky above Sunless Peak was still shrouded in a thick layer of black clouds and mist. The scene of blood and fire intertwining on the peak of the mountain looked particularly tragic. When Ji Tianqing descended from the sky and landed on the broken peak of the mountain, he saw that the ruins were littered with corpses and skeletons. One after another, white skeletons were lying haphazardly in the ruins. The tragic scene was shocking. Some of the skeletons were broken, while others were relatively intact. They were still in the posture they were in before they died, and they seemed to be in extreme pain and despair. Ji Tianqing couldn't recognize the skeletons, but he could guess that they must be the disciples of the hidden god sect. Damn it! In the end, I was still one step too late. His heart was heavy to the extreme. His eyes were cold, his face was ashen, and his fists were clenched so tightly that they creaked. When he learned that the hidden god sect was in trouble, he rushed back as fast as he could, but he still missed it. The entire hidden god sect was dead silent. There was almost no living person in sight. It was as tragic as purgatory on earth. It was clear that the disaster had occurred a day or two ago. If he wasn't in a hurry to leave, he could have stayed in the hidden god sect for a few more days. He could have fought the blood god with the hidden god sect. Unfortunately, the world was unpredictable. In just a few days, the once sacred and dignified hidden god sect had become like this. At this time, a rustling sound came from the ruins in front of him. There were also a few painful groans and screams. Ji Tianqing immediately looked up and saw that there was some movement in the ruins 100 steps away. He hurriedly stepped over the ruins piled up with bricks and debris. His figure flashed and flew 300 meters away, Arriving on top of a pile of blackened bricks and wood, a golden-haired young man was lying in the middle of several skeletons. His white robe was already in tatters and had been dyed dark red by blood. His golden hair was also soaked in blood, and his face was covered in dirty blood. It was almost impossible to see his original appearance. Below his waist, the flesh and blood had disappeared, leaving only white bones behind. His body was covered in wounds, at least 20 of them. But the most fatal ones were the 2 bloody holes on his forehead and chest. They pierced his heart and soul, respectively. Even so, he did not die immediately. He still had one last breath left. He struggled weakly, letting out a muffled groan. He opened his arms and hugged a huge white skeleton, refusing to let go. The skeleton was over 100 feet long and over 20 feet tall, like a small hill. Most parts of the skeleton were devoid of flesh and blood, but there was still a small section with some flesh and scales. That basin-sized scale was clearly the scale of a flood dragon, and it was gray in color. Seeing this scene, Ji Tianqing instantly understood that it was a section of the Azure Dragon's corpse. He looked around and saw a few pieces of the Azure Dragon's corpse scattered among the ruins. There were dragon skeletons with only white bones left, and huge dragon heads that were badly mutilated. Without a doubt, the Azure Dragon had been killed, and its corpse had been chopped into several pieces. And the golden-haired youth who refused to let go of the Azure Dragon's corpse must be Shi. Ji Tianqing felt as if his heart had fallen into an ice cellar. He hurriedly flew to Shi side and called out, "Lion! Lion! Wake up!" Hearing his anxious and worried voice, Shi, who was in a coma, trembled, and his fingers trembled slightly. "Xing! Brother!" His voice was extremely weak, and he called out weakly. Unfortunately, his voice was muffled in his throat, and ordinary people could not hear him clearly. Ji Tianqing was full of worry. He hurriedly used the greenwood genuine qi and injected the rich vitality into his body. With the mighty greenwood genuine qi, Shi recovered some vitality and opened his eyes in a daze. He looked at Ji Tianqing with misty eyes, his blood-stained lips moved, and his voice was weak. He said intermittently, "Tianqing. Brother, you're finally back." Ji Tianqing nodded with a heavy heart and quickly asked, "Lion, what happened? When did the Devil Clan attack? Where are Sect Master Xueqi and the elders?" 2 days ago, the Devil Clan suddenly attacked, sneaked into our sect, released a monstrous sea of blood, and killed countless disciples. I heard from my master that the leader was at the primordial spirit realm, and there were 2 powerful devil commanders. Most of the disciples were not qualified to participate in the battle, and they were caught off guard and died. The elders and deacons also died in the battle. Shi gradually woke up, his spirit was much better, and he spoke more and more clearly. But Ji Tianqing knew that this was the final radiance of the setting sun, and he would soon exhaust his last trace of vitality and die completely. He nodded with a heavy face, held Shi hand, and said, "Lion, you don't have to say any more. Stop and rest. I will find a way to treat your injury." Shi looked at him firmly, shook his head and said, "Brother Tianqing, you don't have to save me. I know my situation. I have no power to reverse the situation. You don't have to waste your magic power. In the last time of my life, I can see you appear and say goodbye to you face to face. I have no regrets." Hearing this, Ji Tianqing's heart suddenly tightened, as if it was pierced by a needle. He stared at Shi and said in a low voice, "If I had stayed in the Hidden God sect for a few more days, this tragedy wouldn't have happened. If I hadn't dealt with the Hidden God sect, maybe the Devil Clan wouldn't have killed their way here." Without waiting for him to finish, Shi shook his head and said, "Brother Tianqing, don't blame yourself. This matter has nothing to do with you. Those devils came for the sect master. Meeting you in this life, adventuring with you, exploring the southern desolate Great Swamp, is the luckiest thing in my life. Brother Tianqing, thank you for treating me as a friend and trusting me. Thank you for coming back to see me and accompanying me on the last journey of my life. In order to protect me, Brother Long has already passed on before me. I also want to accompany it and fulfill my promise to be with it forever, to be its brother and partner forever." As Shi spoke, his voice became weaker and weaker, and the rest of his words could not be heard. His life force was finally exhausted. His eyes slowly closed, and there was no more sound coming from him. Ji Tianqing held his hand, and felt the temperature of his palm gradually dissipate, until it finally became cold. His body stiffened, and after a long time, he slowly let go of Shi Zhongjian's hand. After stepping into the world of martial Tao for so many years, he was used to seeing too many deaths, and he had gradually become numb to it. However, Shi Zhongjian was different from the others, and it was a heavy stroke in his experience. He had seen many martial artists' reactions of madness, unwillingness, anger, despair, and hatred before they died. But he had never seen a person like Shi Zhongjian, who died peacefully, calmly, and without regrets. Even at the moment of his death, Shi Zhongjian did not blame anyone. Chapter 1349. Ji Tianqing recalled the times he met Shi Zhongjian and felt that this guy was so silly that he was adorable. Shi Zhongjian was definitely not a smart person, but he was definitely the most reliable friend and brother. Lion, I hope that you and Songlong can support each other and grow in the other world. I hope that you and Songlong can be brothers forever, share life and death together, and always maintain a pure heart. Ji Tianqing murmured and bowed toward Shi Zhongjian's corpse. The mountain peak was in ruins, and the corpses of the hidden god sect disciples were everywhere. Now was not the time to bury the corpses, and he wouldn't waste time on this. Swoosh! His figure flashed, and he stepped over Shi Zhongjian and Songlong's corpses, continuing to rush towards the depths of the ruins. His eyes searched around, and he released his divine soul energy to cover the surroundings, searching for any survivors. 15 minutes later, he searched the entire mountain peak, and searched the ruins within a radius of dozens of miles. Although most of the people were dead and corroded into white bones by the devil Qi, he still managed to find one survivor. However, he still managed to find a survivor. It was an elder with the strength of a spirit-refining realm cultivator. This person was the Great Elder, and his physical body had been cut into several pieces, completely destroyed. Only a ball of broken divine soul was left, and it was still curled up in the mind of his physical body, almost unconscious and in a deep sleep. After Ji Tianqing found him, he hurriedly injected boundless magic power into him, and checked his injuries. In the Great Elder's mind, there was a large ball of dark red devil Qi that wrapped around his injured divine soul, and it was still corroding it. If no one came to save him, the Great Elder would definitely not be able to resist the corrosion of the devil Qi, and his divine soul would be destroyed in the end. Ji Tianqing hurriedly activated the power of the heaven-mending orb, and injected a strand of sacred white light into the Great Elder's mind, dispersing and purifying the devil Qi. The Great Elder gradually woke up, and he used a weak divine soul sound transmission to communicate with Ji Tianqing. Young Master Ji, why have you returned? Ji Tianqing cast a spell to heal the Great Elder, and asked anxiously, Great Elder, the matter is complicated, so I won't explain much. Where is Sect Master Xueqi? Were the devil race experts here for her? Where is she? The Great Elder thought for a moment before replying in a weak voice. Headmaster Darren fought the strongest expert of the demon race alone. During the battle, he left the sect and flew into the distant sky. I don't know where she is now or if she's still alive. Ji Tianqing frowned and asked again, Then do you remember where Sect Master Xueqi and the others went? The first elder said, The situation was chaotic at that time. I vaguely remember that they seemed to have gone to the back of the mountain. Ji Tianqing nodded and stopped asking about it. Great Elder, I'll put you into my magic treasure first. You can rest and recuperate. I'll go find Sect Master Xueqi now. After saying that, he took the Great Elder's soul into the Sword World and placed it in a secret room in peaceful Earth City. Then, he got up and left the ruins of the mountain peak, flying to the back of the mountain as fast as lightning. He flew in the sky and released his spiritual energy, which spread out in all directions and covered an area of 50 miles. Whether it was the sky or the ground, nothing could escape the investigation of his spiritual energy. In the process of flying, he saw that the mountains behind Sunless Peak were filled with traces of battle. Many of the mountain peaks were slanted or had enormous ravines split open, causing dust and boulders to collapse. This was clearly caused by the shock waves of the battle between experts. After about 100 breaths of time, he had flown more than 400 miles. Suddenly, he discovered that in the mountains ahead, there was an open space of 100 miles in radius. There had been several thousand-meter-tall mountains there, but they had all disappeared. Several of the mountains had collapsed, turning into endless dust that filled the deep valleys at the foot of the mountains. The open space of 100 miles was a stretch of scorched ruins, covered in deep pits and cracks. Ji Tianqing was immediately certain that the ruins that had been razed to the ground should be where the final battle would take place. As expected, when he used his spiritual energy to carefully investigate the ruins, he sensed a wisp of spiritual energy in a 1,000-meter deep pit. Even though the spiritual energy was very weak, it was much stronger than ordinary spiritual energy. He hurriedly flew to the top of the pit that was 20 miles in radius and looked down at the entire pit from above. He saw that the pit was like the mouth of a bowl, covered in fine black scorched earth and countless boulders. However, his gaze searched the entire pit and did not find Sect Master Xue's figure. He guessed that Xue Ruoyu was likely buried at the bottom of the pit, so he hurriedly used an earth attribute secret art to dig up the dust in the pit. After 10 breaths of time, when he had dug 100 meters deep in the pit, he finally saw a figure. It was an old woman with a head full of silver hair, wearing a luxurious robe, and wearing a gemstone hair ornament and a jade crown on her head. The old woman's robe had long been soaked in blood, and had dried up along with the soil, condensing into a dark red color, looking rather tragic. She lay motionless in the deep pit, her face covered in dirty blood and dust, and her silver hair covered in dust, dim and dim. At this time, except for her primordial spirit that still existed and could still emit spiritual energy, she looked no different from a corpse. Sect Master Xue. She is an primordial spirit realm expert. How could she be injured like this? Seeing Xue Ruoyu's situation, Ji Tianqing's expression changed drastically, revealing a look of deep shock, and only felt that it was unbelievable. He could not imagine that there was an expert in the demon race who could injure Xue Ruoyu to the point of death. Swoosh! He descended from the sky and landed beside Xue Ruoyu, hurriedly reaching out to hold Xue Ruoyu's hand, wanting to inject spiritual energy into her to check her injuries. When he touched Xue Ruoyu's dark red hand that was covered in blood, he suddenly realized that the situation was not right. Xue Ruoyu's hand was soft as if it had no bones, like a piece of soft meat, without any support or strength. The phrase, soft and boneless, was usually used to describe a woman's hand that was light and soft. But now, Xue Ruoyu's hand really did not have any bones. Ji Tianqing frowned, and checked her injuries again, and discovered something even more terrifying. Xue Ruoyu's body was like a piece of soft meat, lying limply on the ground, without any support at all. All the bones in her body had been dug out. It was also because of this that her body was covered in more than 300 wounds, and her blood had almost been completely drained, completely dyeing her a person of blood. Ji Tianqing's pupils contracted, his face turned ashen, and his entire body started to tremble. Incomparable anger and hatred caused his teeth to creak, and the veins on his forehead to bulge. Damned demon race! Using such torture on Sect Master Xue, removing all the bones in her body. How vicious! How cruel! If I do not kill all the demon race in this life, how can I appease the hatred in my heart? Chapter 1350. Anger aside, the most important thing now was to save Xue Ruoyu. Ji Tianqing channeled a large amount of magic power into her body, and used his spiritual power to check on her injuries. After 100 breaths of time, he finally found out about Xue Ruoyu's injuries. Her physical injuries were extremely miserable. Not only were all the bones in her body scraped, there were also hundreds of wounds on her body. Her physical body was on the verge of destruction, and would need at least 10 years of recuperation to slowly recover. In the depths of her mind, there was a 2-inch-tall golden figure floating. That was her primordial spirit. The golden figure was also unconscious and riddled with wounds. Its limbs were incomplete. To a primordial spirit realm expert, the primordial spirit was the source of life and power. The primordial spirit could leave the body and move freely even without the support of the physical body. However, Xue Ruoyu's primordial spirit's injuries were too severe. In comparison, her physical injuries were negligible. Ji Tianqing had not reached the primordial spirit realm and did not understand the structure of the primordial spirit. Naturally, he could not treat Xue Ruoyu's injuries. The only thing he could do was to continuously channel his soul power to help Xue Ruoyu recover some of her strength. In addition, Xue Ruoyu's primordial spirit was surrounded by a dense dark red blood aura that contained an extremely powerful and evil power. This dark red blood aura was like maggots attached to bones, constantly corroding her primordial spirit. Ji Tianqing channeled the power of the heaven-mending pearl and released a mysterious white light to help her remove the dark red blood aura around her primordial spirit. After a full hour, the dark red blood aura on her primordial spirit was removed and purified by the heaven-mending pearl. Xue Ruoyu's crisis was temporarily resolved and her consciousness gradually woke up. When Ji Tianqing saw that she was gradually regaining consciousness, he let out a sigh of relief and asked with concern, "Sect Master Xue, how is your situation?" Xue Ruoyu's physical body had no bones and her injuries were too severe. She could not move or speak at all. She could only reply to Ji Tianqing with her consciousness. She said weakly, "Little junior brother, why are you back? Quickly leave this place. It's dangerous." Ji Tianqing gently shook his head and said heavily, "Sect Master Xue, don't worry about me. You've already been unconscious for 2 days. The demon experts have already left." Hearing his words, Xue Ruoyu heaved a sigh of relief and said with some rejoicing, "Little junior brother, luckily you left in time and avoided this calamity. Otherwise, the consequences would be unimaginable." Ji Tianqing didn't reply and asked in a low voice, "Sect Master Xue, who attacked the Hidden God sect?" Among the demon race, apart from the ancient demon emperor, were there any other essence soul powerhouses? The ghost emperor, who is the strongest among them, has personally gone to kill me. Who else can deal with the Hidden God sect and injure you to this extent? Xue Ruoyu recalled for a moment, then said with a resentful tone, "There were 7 or 8 Devil Clan experts who attacked our sect. Among them, there were 2 Devil Commanders and several Spirit Refinement Realm experts. However, these people were nothing to worry about. More than half of them have already been killed by me and the elders. The one with the most terrifying strength and the most mysterious background was their leader, Venerable Bloodlust. That fiend's strength is comparable to a second firmament essence soul, a level higher than mine." Venerable Bloodlust? Ji Tianqing frowned and muttered doubtfully, "In the demon race, below the demon emperor are the devil commanders. Why is there a venerable title? Sect Master Xue, what does that Venerable Bloodlust look like?" Xue Ruoyu said coldly, "That Venerable Bloodlust doesn't seem to be a demon. His origin is a ball of bloody light that can transform into all kinds of forms. He can turn into a giant that's 100 feet tall, a beast that's 1,000 feet tall, and a bloody light that's 1,000 miles long. He can even escape into the void and conceal himself. He's almost immortal. I exhausted all my strength and even sacrificed a divine artifact before I managed to injure and repel Venerable Bloodlust." At this point, Ji Tianqing was certain that the so-called Venerable Bloodlust was a blood god created by the demon emperor. "Sect Master Xue, before I killed the ghost emperor, he proudly said that the demon emperor had sent a few powerful blood gods to plunder a few divine items to complete the demon emperor's shocking scheme. According to what you've said, that Venerable Bloodlust should be a blood god." Blood god. Xue Ruoyu was stunned for a moment before she came to a realization. "I see, it's indeed the legendary blood god. When I was dealing with the Venerable Bloodlust, I saw that he wasn't a demon race elite, but he was more powerful than an ordinary demon. That's why I had such a thought. However, the blood god only exists in ancient legends and hasn't appeared for nearly 10,000 years. That ancient demon emperor is indeed ruthless. He's worthy of being called the great demon of the ages to be able to create the legendary blood god. If a few more blood gods like the Venerable Bloodlust appear, I'm afraid that all the races in the world will be unable to resist them. The entire Tianxian continent will be plunged into misery and suffering." Obviously, Xue Ruoyu also knew about the legend of the blood god. Ji Tianqing didn't need to explain the origin of the blood god. With a heavy heart he said, "Sect Master Xue, actually half a year ago, I killed 2 blood gods." At that time, there were 2 blood gods that wreaked havoc in the various cities of the East Sea and the territories of the Water Tribe. They spread all kinds of poisonous plagues and disasters, killing tens of millions of people. The blood gods absorbed the blood and souls of the people to strengthen themselves. In a short time, they reached the soul refinement realm from the heaven origin realm. However, I didn't expect that the Venerable Bloodlust who attacked the God Hidden sect was actually at the primordial soul realm. It's not hard to imagine that the Venerable Bloodlust is most likely one of the best among the blood gods. He must have killed at least hundreds of millions of people and martial artists to reach the primordial soul realm. Hearing him say so, Xue Ruoyu was instantly filled with worry. She asked in a low voice, "Tianqing, you mean that the demon emperor has created a lot of blood gods?" Ji Tianqing nodded and said, "Half a year ago, the imperial tutor told me that the demon emperor had created hundreds of blood gods. Now that half a year has passed, the demon emperor must have created even more blood gods. I'm afraid that the number has doubled. Moreover, in the past half a year, the continent has been plagued by disasters and wars. I don't know how many millions of people have been killed. Those blood gods must have reached the soul refinement realm." Xueqi became more and more nervous and worried. Doesn't that mean that the demon race has gained hundreds of soul refinement realm experts? The best of the blood gods are comparable to the primordial soul realm experts and have an immortal body? Ji Tianqing didn't answer. He just nodded in silence. His heart was getting heavier. Xueqi was silent for a while. Suddenly, she thought of something and cried out in alarm. "Oh no! Little junior brother. Quickly send a message to Emperor Yi and Xiao Wentian. Tell them to hide quickly." Chapter 1351. What? Emperor Yi and Xiao Wentian are also in danger? Ji Tianqing frowned and looked at Xueqi in confusion. Xueqi was also stunned and asked, "Little junior brother, did the burial of heaven not tell you about this?" "Huh? What is it?" Ji Tianqing was even more confused and could not make sense of it. Xueqi was sure that he did not know, so she explained patiently. "You said just now that before the ghost emperor died, he revealed the demon emperor's plan and conspiracy to seize a few divine items. The venerable bloodlust attacked our sect to carry out the demon emperor's mission to seize a divine item. Its target is me, because that divine item is on me." Ji Tianqing nodded and asked, "Sect Master Xue, what divine item is the demon emperor after? A special divine item?" "No." Xueqi's voice was cold. Xueqi's tone was cold and filled with hatred as she said, "That divine item is the only keepsake that Master left for me. It is also Master's inheritance." "Keepsake? Inheritance?" Ji Tianqing frowned again. Xueqi said leisurely, "It's Master's rib, a divine bone." "What? It's Kenshin's rib?" Ji Tianqing's face was filled with disbelief. Xueqi explained in a low voice, "Before Master left the Tianxian continent, he gave me a divine bone to integrate into my body in order to thank me for following and serving him. That divine bone is more mysterious than any divine item in the world. It allowed me to be reborn and my talent reached the peak. With the help of the divine bone, I could gradually become a soul refinement realm elite and break through to the primordial soul realm within 1,000 years. After 1,000 years of growth and refinement, the power of that divine bone has filled all of my bones and marrow. My skeleton is comparable to a divine item and I have become a complete set of divine bones." Hearing this, Ji Tianqing was enlightened and thought to himself, "No wonder Xueqi remembers Kenshin's kindness and has always regarded Kenshin as her master. She worships Kenshin like a god. Even though Kenshin has been dead for 1,000 years, she has never betrayed him nor forgotten him." Xueqi continued, "The venerable bloodlust attacked our sect to seize my divine bone. This is the divine item that the demon emperor mentioned. Although I can't guess the demon emperor's scheme, I'm sure that he sent other elites to deal with Emperor Yi and Xiao Wentian. Emperor Yi and Xiao Wentian are Master's disciples in name. Before Master left the continent, he gave them a divine item each, respectively. The divine item that his master had given Emperor Yi was a divine dragon tendon that originated from ancient times. It was a dragon tendon pulled out from the body of a true divine dragon. The divine item is a drop of God's blood? According to Master, it is the blood of a real god from the ancient times." Ji Tianqing heard this secret for the first time and was even more shocked. He muttered in disbelief, "Kenshin's divine bone, a dragon's tendon from an ancient god, and a drop of God's blood? Kenshin is really generous to his own disciple." No, just a disciple in name. He also gradually understood why Emperor Yi, Xiao Wentian, and Xueqi would follow Kenshin to death and respect him for their entire lives. Kenshin's peerless martial strength and charisma were truly the best in the world, causing people to admire him. At this moment, a thought even appeared in his mind. How good would it be if Kenshin was still alive? He also wanted to see Kenshin's peerless glory with his own eyes. Just as his thoughts were wandering, Xueqi reminded him, "Tianqing, don't waste any more time. Immediately send a message to them." Ji Tianqing was immediately embarrassed and said helplessly, "Sect Master Xue, When I said goodbye to them, I only promised to contact them in the future. I didn't leave any transmission jade slips. Under normal circumstances, the transmission jade slips of soul-refining powerhouses would have their own divine soul imprint. Two powerhouses would have to exchange transmission jade slips with each other in order to directly send the transmission jade slip to the other party. However, Ji Tianqing, Emperor Yi, and Xiao Wentian didn't exchange transmission jade slips. The only thing he could do was to send a transmission jade slip to Xiao Han and let him inform Xiao Wentian. On the other side, he sent a transmission to Long Yun Xiao in the central state, asking him to help send a message to Emperor Yi. After he sent the transmission jade slip, Xue Ruoyu felt a little more at ease. She said in a low voice, "I hope your message can arrive in time. It won't take too long, otherwise." Sigh. Ji Tianqing also asked someone to help send the message. Of course, he couldn't guarantee that the message would arrive in time. He could only sigh and pray silently in his heart, hoping that nothing happened to Emperor Yi and Xiao Wentian. At this time, he suddenly remembered something and asked Xue Ruoyu, "Sect Master Xue, don't Kenshin have 4 in-name disciples? I've spent more than a year and searched all over the world, but I only found you, Emperor Yi, and Xiao Wentian. May I ask Sect Master Xue, who is the other in-name disciple? Is that person surnamed Gu?" Xue Ruoyu answered, her voice full of memories. "That's right. He's the eldest senior brother of the 3 of us, and also the genius that Master valued the most. His surname is indeed Gu, and his real name is Gu Daoxian. Unfortunately, after Master left the profound sky continent, he mysteriously disappeared. Now that 1,000 years have passed, the 3 of us are in different parts of the world and almost no longer contact each other. No one knows where our eldest senior brother went or where he went. Perhaps he's still alive, or perhaps he's already fallen. Perhaps he's still on this continent, or perhaps he's already followed in Master's footsteps and left this continent." Ji Tianqing listened carefully and muttered in his heart, "Gu Daoxian? Kenshin's most valued eldest disciple? Sect Master Xue. Then what is the divine item that Kenshin gave to Gu Daoxian?" Xue Ruoyu was silent. She carefully recalled for a long time before she said in a deep voice, "I'm not too sure about the specifics. However, I've heard Ran Huangyi mention it once. Master values senior apprentice brother the most. Therefore, the divine item he gave senior apprentice brother was also the most astonishing. It's said that the divine item that Master gave to his senior brother seemed to be a divine heart, the heart of an ancient divine spirit." "What? The heart of an ancient divine spirit?" Ji Tianqing's body shook, and his eyes widened slightly. The shock in his heart was like a stormy sea. Heavens! What kind of extraordinary and peerless expert was Kenshin back then? He took a rib from his body, and it was a divine bone. The gift he gave to an in-name disciple was either divine dragon tendons, divine blood, or even a divine heart. Kenshin couldn't have slain dragons and gods personally, killing divine dragons and ancient divine spirits, right? Seeing Ji Tianqing's shock, Xue Ruoyu said gently, "Little junior brother, you don't have to be so shocked. Master is not an ordinary person, and he's as powerful and noble as a divine spirit. He's omnipotent. He can create all miracles." Although the divine items that the 3 senior brothers received were all divine dragon tendons, divine blood, and divine hearts. Chapter 1352. Even the burial of heaven knew about Xue Ruoyu's feelings for Kenshin. Although the divine items that Kenshin gave to his 3 in-name disciples were shocking treasures, they were merely worldly possessions. The only divine item that he gave to Xue Ruoyu was a rib bone that he took from his body. To Xue Ruoyu, this was extremely significant and important. Ji Tianqing understood this, which was why he felt sorry for Xue Ruoyu and hated the demon race even more. After all, after venerable bloodlust injured Xue Ruoyu, he removed all the divine bones in her body. Such a blood feud was absolutely irreconcilable. Ji Tianqing thought to himself, the demon emperor sent out a few of his most powerful blood gods to deal with Xue Ruoyu, Xiao Wentian, and Emperor Yi to seize their divine bones, divine dragon tendons, and divine blood. Why is the demon emperor doing this? What is his scheme and plan? Other than these 3, will the demon emperor deal with Gu Daoxian and seize his heart of God? Fortunately, Gu Daoxian has disappeared for 1,000 years. Even Xue Ruoyu, Emperor Yi, and Xiao Wentian don't know his whereabouts. The demon emperor shouldn't be able to find him, right? At this moment, Xueqi transmitted her voice to him. Little junior brother, you don't have to stay here and take care of me. My injuries are too severe and can't be healed overnight. You have to report this matter to the emperor as soon as possible and ask for his help to destroy the demon emperor's plan. No matter what, we can't let the demon emperor's scheme succeed. Once the demon emperor obtains my divine bones, Emperor Ye's divine dragon tendons, and Xiao Wentian's divine blood, he will be able to condense an extraordinary body comparable to a divine artifact. If the demon emperor uses that divine body to carry out his scheme, I'm afraid no one on this continent will be able to stop him. Hearing Xueqi's reminder, Ji Tianqing's eyes flashed with a bright light. He immediately guessed the demon emperor's scheme. Could it be that the demon emperor seizing these divine items has something to do with reviving the ancestral demon god? When he thought of this, he became even more anxious and worried. No, I must stop the demon emperor's plan. I can't let him succeed. Ji Tianqing secretly clenched his fists, his eyes flashing with fierce killing intent. He said in a deep voice, Sect Master Xueqi, I will immediately send a message to the emperor and ask the imperial court to send someone to clean up the mess of the hidden god sect. However, you can't stay here. It's too dangerous. I'll transfer you into my magic treasure space. You can go into seclusion to heal your injuries. I will personally go find Xiao Wentian and Emperor Yi and help them resist the blood god's attack. If there's enough time. Xueqi was shocked. She tried to dissuade him worriedly. Little junior brother. Even I am no match for venerable bloodlust. Even if you go and save them, I'm afraid it will be useless. Ji Tianqing shook his head and comforted her. Don't worry, Master Xueqi. I've killed 2 blood gods before. I know their origins and weaknesses like the back of my hand. Moreover, I have the power and magic treasure to restrain the blood gods. Even if I encounter a primordial soul realm blood god, I still have a chance to kill it. Xueqi was finally relieved. She solemnly exhorted, Little junior brother, you must be careful. Don't underestimate the enemy. Now, you are the hope of the 4 of us. You are also the only successor of Master. The responsibility on your shoulders is heavier than any of us. After she finished speaking, Ji Tianqing put her into the sword world and settled her in a secret room in peaceful Earth City, allowing her to recuperate in peace. After settling Xueqi down, he took out a communication jade slip and sent a message to the emperor. He reported the details of the incident to the emperor in full detail. After doing all this, he left the giant pit and flew into the sky. Swoosh! He rode the divine soul magic sword and streaked across the sky like a shooting star, rushing towards the southeast. The Xiao clan where Xiao Wentian lived was located in the southern wasteland swamp. The boundless world where Emperor Yi lived in seclusion was located in the Mangu mountain range. In comparison, the Vermilion Bird mountain range was closer to the southern wasteland swamp. Therefore, Ji Tianqing decided to make a trip to the southern wasteland swamp first to personally check on Xiao Wentian's situation. Even though he had already expended too much magic power and mental strength, he was truly physically and mentally exhausted. However, he did not dare to stop and rest. He did not even dare to slow down. He rushed towards the southern wasteland swamp with all his might. In the next 10 days, he rushed day and night without stopping for a moment. 10 days later, it was dusk. He was flying above a vast mountain range. Suddenly, a shocking scene appeared in the quiet and serene world of the sword. Ji Tianqing sensed the abnormality in the sword world and hurriedly released his divine soul power to check on the specific situation. He saw that there was a dazzling 7-colored pillar of light that shot into the sky from the city lord's residence in peaceful Earth City. That pillar of light was incomparably huge. It was 100 meters wide and thousands of feet tall. It contained boundless and mighty magic power. It wrapped around the spiritual energy of heaven and earth that was as vast as the sea. After it rushed into the sky, it scattered in all directions, turning into rolling 7-colored waves that spread out in all directions. In a short 10 breaths, the sky thousands of miles around peaceful Earth City was covered by the 7-colored light, turning into a dazzling and resplendent world. That 7-colored light that covered the sky emitted a vast and mighty spiritual energy. It actually condensed into 7-colored spiritual liquid that sprinkled down like a downpour. The land thousands of miles was covered by the 7-colored spiritual liquid rain, causing the spiritual energy of heaven and earth to surge, the light dazzling. After the spiritual liquid landed on the ground, the land outside peaceful Earth City underwent a dramatic change visible to the naked eye. The boundless vast grassland grew wildly at an extremely fast speed. The weeds that were originally chopstick tall actually grew to half a person's height in 10 breaths. Those small trees and shrubs that were as tall as a person actually became trees that were 30 feet tall in a dozen breaths. Originally, this growth required 3 to 5 years. But under the nourishment of the monstrous spiritual liquid, it actually completed in a dozen breaths. This was simply an inconceivable miracle. Even within peaceful Soil City, a shocking change had taken place. Grass and trees sprouted from the streets and alleys. Countless flowers of various colors also sprouted from the roofs of the various houses. For a moment, the grayish-brown peaceful Earth City transformed into a kingdom of flowers and plants. It was like spring had returned to the Earth. This wondrous sight left all the Earth Spirit commoners stunned. The commoners walked out of their homes and looked up at the resplendent 7-colored sky, exclaiming in shock. At this moment, the 7-colored light that covered the sky began to flow and transform, gradually condensing into tens of thousands of 7-colored specks of light. Each speck of light was the size of a wash basin. They flickered with dazzling light, hanging in the sky like stars. At least 90,000 specks of 7-colored light covered the sky, forming a majestic sea of stars. It was so mysterious and vast that it made one sigh in amazement. Ji Tianqing was so shocked by this wondrous sight that his heartbeat sped up. Chapter 1353. Yao Yao. Yao Yao must have refined the Neptunian divine orb, which is why it's causing such a phenomenon. Ji Tianqing's eyes flickered with light as he murmured excitedly. In the next moment, he personally entered the world within the sword and landed in Anteri City. He directly made his way to the secret room where Yun Yao cultivated. At the same time, the resplendent sea of stars that covered 1,000 miles of the sky dimmed and gradually dissipated. Many Earth Spirit commoners remained where they were, watching the phenomenon in the sky. They refused to disperse even after a very long time had passed. Swish! Ji Tianqing hurried to the entrance of the secret room with lightning speed. He saw dazzling 5-colored light permeate the surroundings of the room, giving off powerful pulses of energy. The 5-colored light gradually receded, and the pulses of power gradually dispersed as well. Eventually, it completely dispersed. The surroundings of the secret room settled down. Ji Tianqing waited outside for 100 seconds before the door slowly opened. Swish! As the door of the secret chamber opened, a dazzling 5-colored brilliance surged out like a tide. Afterwards, an ethereal fairy-like figure in a white dress walked out of the secret room, shrouded in 5-colored light. Ji Tianqing's eyes were fixed on her, carefully observing the changes in her. Even though her figure and appearance were the same as before, there wasn't much change. She had not changed much, but the minute changes made her even more beautiful. She really did seem like a fairy, otherworldly. When she walked out of the 5-colored light, she was like a goddess from legends. She was so noble and holy that people could only look up to her and not profane her. Her beauty could not be described with words. No matter how fancy the words were, they would not be enough to describe her. Ji Tianqing was entranced. He was unable to shift his gaze away. There was only a single thought in his head. The goddess of Yaoguang who was worshipped by all the people and revered by all the gods in the ancient times should be like this, right? In the blink of an eye, Yun Yao stopped in front of him and smiled gently at him. Tianqing, I've made you worry. Ji Tianqing was awakened by her voice. He immediately reached out to hold her soft hands and said, Yao Yao, you've been in seclusion for 3 months, and now you've finally succeeded. I see that you have changed a lot. You must have gained a lot, right? Yun Yao nodded. She stared at him and said calmly and gently, That's right. After refining the Neptunian divine pearl, my vitality has increased by several times. I can extend my life by 10 years at the very least. Moreover, my magic power has increased by around 20 times and my strength has broken through to the 7th level of the soul refinement realm. I'm very close to the 8th level. The Neptunian divine pearl also has various wondrous effects, allowing me to open up my mind and allow my talent to reach a new level. I've even comprehended many secret techniques. Ji Tianqing became even more excited when he heard that. He said enviously, That's unbelievable. I've gone through so much danger and put in so much effort. I even endured the pain of being struck by the divine lightning, and only managed to break through to the 7th level of the soul refinement realm after so much difficulty. Yao Yao, you only needed to refine a single Neptunian divine pearl to increase your cultivation by several levels, allowing you to reach the 7th level of the soul refinement realm. It really is the legacy of an ancient goddess after all. It actually has such heaven-defying effects. Sigh. It really is exasperating when you compare yourself to others. If others find out about this and make it public, everyone on the entire profound sky continent will be stunned by you, right? Yun Yao smiled faintly and shook her head gently. It sounds simple, but refining the Neptunian divine pearl alone was also life-threatening. Fortunately, I succeeded. If I failed, my soul would have been stolen away by the Neptunian divine pearl instead, and I would have died immediately. No one can succeed so easily. Miracles that seem shocking often hide great danger and effort behind them. Ji Tianqing also nodded with a gentle smile. Yeah, that's the truth. I was just shocked earlier as well, and that's all. All in all, it's already extremely fortunate that you were able to refine the Neptunian divine pearl and increase your strength by countless times. Yun Yao held his hand and looked at him in confusion. She asked, Tianqing, you must have gone through a lot of danger and suffered a lot during the 3 months I was in seclusion, right? Just now, I heard you say that you were struck by divine lightning. What's going on? It's a long story. Ji Tianqing told Yun Yao everything that had happened in the past 3 months in full detail. Only then did Yun Yao know that he had gone through so many dangerous and bizarre things. Only after a while of thought did she ask, Tianqing, are you going to the southern marsh right now to check on the Shao clan situation? Yes, Ji Tianqing nodded. Yun Yao said in concern, you're physically and mentally exhausted right now, so it's not suitable for you to travel desperately. You need to recover as soon as possible. How about this? You stay in the sword world to recover, and I'll continue on my way with the sword of burial of heaven. After a moment of consideration, Ji Tianqing said, there's no need. You've just emerged from seclusion, and your strength has skyrocketed. You still need some time to recover and consolidate your cultivation. It's best for the little black dragon to take care of the journey. It's already recovered anyway. As a result, the matter was decided just like that. Ji Tianqing and Yun Yao remained in the sword world to recover in a secret room in Anshui City. The little black dragon carried the sword of burial of heaven and flew through the sky with lightning speed, hurrying towards the southern marsh. In a dimly lit secret room, Ji Tianqing sat cross-legged on the ground. Beneath him was a soul-level spirit-gathering formation to aid in his cultivation. He sat in the formation with a calm expression, and his deep eyes flashed with the light of contemplation. The first level of the path of Sword Soul is to condense the Golden Sword and Magic Sword. The second level is to condense the Sword Domain, a unique sword domain that belongs to oneself. In my current situation, it's a pity if I only condense an ordinary sword domain. I have to add other powers into the sword domain. Without a doubt, Ji Tianqing's seclusion in the secret room was not just to recover his magic power. He also wanted to use this opportunity to condense his own sword domain. The stronger he was, the more he desired the power of domains, and the more he wanted to condense his own sword domain as soon as possible. Once he successfully condensed his sword domain, his battle prowess would increase by at least twofold. After a long while, the light in his eyes gradually became determined. Other than the supreme sword Tao that Kenshin inherited, the most powerful powers that I control are the Divine Thunder and Divine Flame. Since that's the case, I'll combine the Divine Eye of Thunder and the God-slaying Spear into my sword domain. Both the Divine Thunder and Divine Flame are powerful powers that can kill enemies of a higher level. If I can successfully combine these two powers into my sword domain, it will produce an immeasurable power. At that time, my battle prowess will increase by at least 3 times. Chapter 1354. Ji Tianqing was pressed for time. He did not dare to waste any time and immediately went into seclusion to comprehend the second stage of the path of Sword Soul. The secret chamber was silent as time passed by. 1 day, 2 days, 3 days. Soon, 5 days had passed. For 5 whole days, he had been comprehending cultivation techniques and figuring out how to condense a sword domain. He had deduced, comprehended, and calculated thousands of times in his mind. Finally, he had simulated the embryonic form of the sword domain and had vaguely touched the threshold. He only needed half a month to try to condense the divine lightning sword domain. However, just as he was about to try, the little black dragon's voice rang in his mind. "Old Ji, we are about to reach the Shao clan." Ji Tianxing was immediately jolted awake. He quickly ended his cultivation and left the sword world. Swoosh! With a flash of light, he appeared on the little black dragon's back. He looked ahead and saw that the surroundings were pitch-black quagmires that seemed boundless. A few hundred miles ahead, there were two adjacent mounds that stood tall in the pitch-black quagmires. The mounds were not big and were covered with dense forests and shrubs. That was the entrance to the Shao clan. It was called the Gemini Island by the Shao clan. Ji Tianxing frowned as he looked at the Gemini Island. He carefully observed the forests on the island and the quagmires around the island. Fortunately, the Gemini Island was well preserved. The forests on the island were still neat and tidy. There were no signs of fighting. The pitch-black quagmires around the Gemini Island were also as calm and silent as before. It seems like the demon race experts have not found this place yet. I hope that the tragedy has not happened and that I have arrived in time. Ji Tianxing secretly heaved a sigh of relief and prayed silently in his heart. After a while, he flew to the center of the Gemini Island and took out a token from his interspatial ring. This was the token that Xiao Wentian had given him before he left the Shao clan. Not only could it activate the Shao clan's enchantment array, but it could also command all the Shao clan disciples. Ji Tianxing held the token in his hand and waved his right palm. Rays of golden light shot out as he executed the Array Dao secret art. In the blink of an eye, a dazzling white light lit up in midair and formed a wide door of light. Swoosh! Ji Tianxing stepped through the light gate without hesitation and entered the enchantment of the Shao clan. In the next instant, he entered Shao clan and saw a familiar scene. Beneath his feet was a vast and boundless grassland. The grass was waist-high, and the grass was filled with all kinds of flowers and plants. 100 miles ahead was a majestic mountain range that stretched for thousands of miles. It was like a brown dragon lying on the ground. The sky was blue with scattered white clouds floating in the sky. It looked very tranquil and lazy. Upon seeing this scene, Ji Tianxing was even more certain that the Shao clan had yet to suffer a calamity. He leaped into the sky, crossed the vast grassland, and flew toward the mountain range in the distance. On the majestic mountain range, there were a few mountain peaks. Magnificent palaces and residences were built on the mountain peaks. Many disciples of the Shao clan lived there. Ji Tianxing sighed in his heart. He had returned to the Shao clan after so many months. He wondered if the Shao clan's disciples still remembered him. Suddenly, his soul power detected a few large craters on the green grassland below him. In the hundreds of feet wide pits, dark red bloodstains could be vaguely seen. There seemed to be a smear of dark white color. This is... Ji Tianxing frowned and released his spiritual power to investigate carefully. He then discovered that there were more than 10 skeletons buried in the deep pits. All of them were complete skeletons. He suddenly had a bad premonition and his face turned gloomy. As he continued to fly forward, he saw that there were deep pits and cracks on the vast grassland. In some inconspicuous places, such as the soil in the deep pits and the messy grass, there were dark red bloodstains and skeletons scattered around. "Oh no, I'm afraid something has happened to the Shao clan." Ji Tianxing's heart tightened. He quickly increased his speed and flew toward the mountain range. Not long after, he flew to the sky above a mountain peak. There was a huge manor on the mountain peak. There were dozens of palaces and residences built in it. Ji Tianxing knew that this was the residence of the third branch's disciples. It was called Tingfeng Garden. When he first came to the Shao clan, he stayed in this residence. At that time, this place was magnificent. All the gates and palaces in the manor were guarded by armored guards with swords. However, when he looked down at Tingfeng Garden from the sky, all he saw was a mess of ruins, as well as a ghastly scene. The magnificent palaces had collapsed and turned into rubble. They were piled up on the broken pillars and walls. Countless houses and residences were in ruins, as if they had been trampled by ancient beasts. The ground was covered with wide gullies, deep pits, and piles of brick and wood ruins. Dark red bloodstains could be seen everywhere in the ruins. Many white skeletons were scattered around. Most of the skeletons were relatively well preserved. They were still in the position they were in before they died. Some of them were fleeing in panic, some were dodging desperately, and some were fighting back with all their might. However, without exception, These disciples of the Shao clan had died in a short period of time. Their flesh, blood and souls had been extracted, leaving only skeletons behind. Ji Tianqing did not know anyone from the third branch. He could not tell who these skeletons belonged to when they were alive. However, he released his spiritual energy and searched the entire Tingfeng garden for dozens of miles around the mountain peak. He did not find a single living person. There was not a single sound in the huge ruins. It was as silent as death. It was as eerie and terrifying as purgatory. All the signs before his eyes indicated that the Shao clan had been killed by the demon clan. Moreover, no one in Tingfeng garden was left alive. Damn it! In the end, I was still one step too late. Ji Tianqing clenched his fists. His eyes were cold as he muttered in a cold voice. He did not stay in Tingfeng garden. He quickly flew into the sky and headed for the neighboring mountain peak. Not long after, he investigated the mountain where the second branch's disciples lived. The situation was the same as Tingfeng garden. The entire mountain peak's buildings were destroyed. The ground was shattered. Hundreds of skeletons were scattered in the messy ruins. Not a single person was left alive. Ji Tianqing's expression darkened. His eyes turned colder, and the killing intent around him boiled. He continued to fly to the third mountain peak, then the fourth, the fifth. After 15 minutes, Ji Tianqing flew back to the sky. He looked down at the entire mountain range with a sharp gaze. This mountain range, which had borne the glory of the Shao clan for thousands of years, had changed beyond recognition. It was as tragic as a purgatory on earth. The entire Shao clan, which had thousands of disciples in each branch, were all dead. The Shao clan, which used to be prosperous and lively, had been massacred by the demon clan. Not a single person was left alive. Ji Tianqing's body was wrapped in a layer of dark red killing intent. His hands were trembling in his sleeves. His eyes were dyed with a layer of blood red by the monstrous killing intent. Demon clan. Ancient demon emperor. Even if I kill all of you 1,000,000 times, it will not be enough to appease the hatred in my heart. Chapter 1355. In the entire Shao clan, thousands of innocent Shao clan disciples had died under the butcher knife of the demon clan. Ji Tianqing's killing intent and anger could not be washed away even with all the water in the world. After a long while, he slowly retracted his gaze and flew towards the Pillar of Heaven's mountains with a heavy heart. The Pillar of Heaven's mountains was the forbidden area of the Shao clan and also the place where the Shao clan's patriarch, Shao Wentian, lived in seclusion. This mountain was extremely huge and was over 10,000 meters tall. It was like a pillar that supported the heavens and earth, emitting a majestic aura. The first time Ji Tianqing saw Shao Wentian, it was at the peak of the Pillar of Heaven's mountains. He clearly remembered that the peak of the mountain was surrounded by a sea of white clouds. On the peak of the mountain, there was a piece of flat land with a radius of 10 miles. It was filled with dark red spiritual feather maple trees. The dense spiritual feather maple leaves were red like fire, turning the peak of the mountain into a dark red world. In the depths of the forest, there was a 2-story wooden house. In the courtyard, there was a 300-meter-tall green maple tree. When he first saw Shao Wentian was sitting under the green maple tree, facing the chessboard. He sat there for a long time without moving. Now, Ji Tianqing passed through the clouds and fog. When he arrived near the Pillar of Heaven's mountains, he was stunned by the scene in front of him. The 10,000-meter-tall mountain had disappeared. He passed through the layers of fog and saw the scene below clearly. It turned out that the towering Pillar of Heaven's mountains had been cut in half. The entire mountain had collapsed and turned into endless rocks. They were piled up in the deep valley at the foot of the mountain, forming a few hundred miles of ruins. The ground around the Pillar of Heaven's mountains was filled with wide gullies and deep pits. The nearby mountains were also affected and turned into rubble. What a tragic scene! Ji Tianqing could imagine the scene of Shao Wentian and the blood god fighting just by looking at the few hundred miles of ruins and the huge cracks in the surroundings. They must have fought until the mountains collapsed and the sun and moon lost their light. After a moment of silence, he quickly collected his thoughts and released his spiritual energy to search carefully in the ruins. Shao Wentian, you must not die. The Pillar of Heaven's mountain that supported the Shao clan's barrier has collapsed. You, the pillar that supported the Shao clan, can't fall too. He prayed silently in his heart as he looked around anxiously. An invisible divine soul power covered an area of dozens of miles and went deep into the ground to search, not missing a single inch. Time passed quietly. The surroundings of the Pillar of Heaven's mountains were deathly silent. Even the air seemed to have frozen. Ji Tianqing's face became more and more solemn, and his expression became more and more unsightly. Very quickly, an hour passed. He searched the area within a radius of a few hundred miles, almost turning the entire ruins upside down. However, he still couldn't find Xiao Wentian. He didn't even find a corpse or a fragment of a magical treasure. Damn it! How could this be? Even if Xiao Wentian was killed, there shouldn't be no trace left behind. Ji Tianqing was filled with anxiety. He stared at the ruins with gloomy eyes and muttered to himself. He was unwilling to give up, so he searched the ruins of the Pillar of Heaven's mountains from top to bottom. This time, he searched even more carefully. His divine soul power went deep into the ground for 40 miles, and even a grain of sand had to be checked. Finally, after an hour, when he searched to the edge of the ruins, he finally found something. 30 miles underground, in the layers of rock layers, there was a subtle fluctuation of dermic powers. This discovery made Ji Tianqing energized. A glimmer of hope reappeared in his despondent eyes. Swoosh! He quickly used the earth escape technique and drilled deep into the ground, flying towards the rock layer. In just a few seconds, he was 40 miles underground and drilled into the rock layer that was as hard as steel. After a careful inspection, he found a black metal piece in the dense and thick rock layer. He held the metal piece in his palm and observed it carefully. He saw that the black metal piece was only the size of a fingernail. It looked simple and ancient, as if it had gone through tens of thousands of years. The edges of the metal piece weren't regular, and there were many cracks on it. It was like a fragment of a magical treasure that had been broken. No matter how he looked at it, this black metal piece was unremarkable. It was no different from scrap metal. But Ji Tianqing was very sure that the fluctuation of dermic powers just now came from this black metal piece. He took the black metal piece and left the underground, and returned to the sky. Holding the black metal piece in his hand, he turned it over and over for a long time. Then, he gradually found some clues. The facts proved that his guess was not wrong. This black metal piece was indeed a fragment of an ancient magical treasure. It still contained a mysterious power. He used his divine soul power to infuse into the black metal piece, and vaguely found that there was a small magical treasure space in the black metal piece. But, the magical treasure space was protected by a mysterious array. If he wanted to investigate the situation in the magical treasure space, he had to break the protective array. I searched all around the Pillar of Heaven's mountains, but I didn't find Xiao Wentian, nor did I find any useful clues. The only clue is this black metal piece. I hope it can bring about a miracle. Ji Tianqing muttered to himself. He then focused on studying the array and thinking of a way to break it. 2 hours, 4 hours, 6 hours. Very quickly, 10 hours had passed. He studied for half a day, and even entered the Kenshin Palace, and went to the Heavenly Book Pavilion. Only then did he find information about the mysterious array. In the end, he was sure that this black metal piece was a product of the ancient era. It should be a fragment of some magical treasure. He pondered for an entire day, and only then did he deduce a way to break it. Then, he started to cast spells to break the array. 2 days later, he used all his skills and exhausted his mind. Finally, he broke the protective array of the magical treasure space. The magical treasure space lost its protection and was exposed to him without any secrets. He didn't care about catching his breath. He impatiently released his divine soul power and probed into the magical treasure space. He saw that in the magical treasure space with a radius of 30 feet, there was a dried corpse lying there. The dried corpse was a human male. The green robe he wore had long been torn, and had become a pile of rags. There was not a single drop of blood in the corpse. It was dry as if it had been baked. The withered skin and muscles tightly wrapped around a skeleton. It had long lost its breath of life. However, in the head of the dried corpse, there was a very weak divine soul fluctuation that was gently pulsing. Although the dried corpse was beyond recognition, and it was impossible to distinguish its gender and age, Ji Tianqing was not unfamiliar with the divine soul fluctuation that came from the dried corpse. His face suddenly changed, and he exclaimed in disbelief, Xiao Wentian. It's actually Xiao Wentian. He has been drained of blood and turned into a dried corpse, and he's still hiding in this black metal piece. Seeing the dignified old man from back then turn into such a miserable state, other than shock, Ji Tianqing felt even more anger and hatred. Xue Ruoyu's divine bone had been removed, and Xiao Wentian's divine blood had also been extracted. Chapter 1356. The situation was urgent. Ji Tianqing had no choice but to suppress his anger and treat Xiao Wentian immediately. He first channeled a vast amount of spiritual energy into Xiao Wentian's body to help him replenish his spiritual energy. An hour later, Xiao Wentian's soul fluctuations became even stronger, and his injuries gradually stabilized. Ji Tianqing spent an entire day carefully treating his spiritual energy injuries and removing the demonic qi from his spiritual energy. Next, he used the greenwood genuine qi to heal Xiao Wentian's body. Unfortunately, Xiao Wentian's body had become a dried corpse and had lost all vitality. Even if Ji Tianqing spent an entire day using the greenwood genuine qi to heal Xiao Wentian, it was useless. Helpless, he could only put Xiao Wentian's body into the sword world and placed it in the green light treasure tree. The green light treasure tree's boundless vitality and greenwood genuine qi could nourish Xiao Wentian's body for a long time and prevent it from being damaged. In the future, Ji Tianqing could think of a way or find a suitable blood for Xiao Wentian. Only then could he truly save Xiao Wentian's body. After all, if he wanted to restore Xiao Wentian's body to life, he needed fresh blood. Ji Tianqing temporarily settled Xiao Wentian down. He then turned around and left the ruins, flying toward the exit of the Xiao clan's barrier. An hour later, he left the Xiao clan through the exit of the barrier. Standing in the sky above Gemini Island, he looked down at Gemini Island and muttered to himself, "Other than Xiao Wentian, the entire Xiao clan has been annihilated. I, Ji Tianqing, will remember this blood feud in my heart. I will use my life to kill the Demon King and avenge the Xiao clan." After saying that, he summoned the little black dragon and flew high into the sky. The Hidden God sect and the Xiao clan have suffered a great calamity. Xue Ruoyu and Xiao Wentian had their divine bones and divine blood stolen by the blood god. I hope Emperor Yi has already received the news and can leave the Mangu mountain range in time to avoid this calamity. With a heavy heart, he prayed silently. The little black dragon flew across the sky like a ray of light and returned to Zhongzhou at the fastest speed possible. Ji Tianqing entered the sword world and continued to cultivate in seclusion, trying to condense the divine lightning sword domain. Unknowingly, half a month had passed. Ji Tianqing had been cultivating in seclusion for 15 days and nights, and he was beginning to see results. After thousands of attempts, he had already comprehended the essence of the sword domain and could successfully condense it. Moreover, the sword domain contained the power of golden divine flames and purple lightning, and it could release powerful killing moves. However, Ji Tianqing's foundation was still shallow. The divine lightning sword domain that he condensed was not big. It could only cover an area of 10 miles. He still needed a long time to comprehend and cultivate in order to make the divine lightning sword domain wider, more stable, and more powerful. On the evening of the 16th day, Ji Tianqing returned to the central continent and arrived at the heaven-connecting peak in the depths of the sky-connecting mountain range. Under the setting sun, heaven-reaching peak was as majestic and imposing as ever. The many palaces on the mountain peak were also covered with a layer of dazzling golden light. Ji Tianqing was not in the mood to enjoy the beautiful scenery. He flew to the mountainside as fast as the wind and wanted to enter the imperial court to have an audience with the emperor. After the imperial court guards at the mountainside confirmed his identity, they respectfully let him pass. He hurried to the mountaintop and entered the heavenly palace under the lead of the imperial guard captain. Still in the spacious and bright study, he saw the emperor who was dealing with military affairs. The emperor was wearing a golden dragon robe and a purple gold dragon jade crown. He was leaning over the large table, holding the imperial brush and writing a personal decree. Ji Tianqing entered the study and bowed with a calm expression. Ji Tianqing pays his respects to the emperor. The emperor did not raise his head. He was still holding the imperial brush and writing the decree. He said in a low and dignified tone, "Ji Tianqing, wait at the side first. We will talk after this emperor deals with the military affairs." Ji Tianqing acknowledged and stood in place to wait. He silently glanced at the table and saw dozens of memorials piled up on the table. Most of them were urgent military memorials. Seeing the emperor's solemn expression and the deep worry between his brows, he had a bad premonition. He was afraid that the war at the front line was in a critical situation. After 100 breaths, the emperor finally finished writing the decree. He called for an imperial guard to pass the decree down. After the imperial guard left, the emperor put down the imperial brush in his hand. He closed his eyes and leaned back on the jade chair. His right hand gently rubbed the space between his eyebrows, revealing a tired expression. Ji Tianqing, this emperor has received the communication jade slip you sent to this emperor. This emperor already knows about what happened to the Hidden God sect and the Demon Emperor's conspiracy. Although the Hidden God sect was destroyed and suffered heavy casualties, their mission was completed. It is already very fortunate that you were able to obtain the Heavenly Dipper God Fire Cauldron. Ji Tianqing nodded and reported in a heavy tone. After leaving the Hidden God sect, this subordinate rushed to the Shao clan in the Great Swamp of the Southern Wasteland. Unfortunately, this subordinate was one step too late. When this subordinate arrived at the boundary of the Shao clan had also suffered a great calamity and was completely destroyed. The Shao clan was also destroyed by the demon race. The emperor suddenly opened his eyes and looked at him with a sharp gaze. What about Shao Wentian? Is he still alive? Ji Tianqing said in a low voice. Fortunately, he is not dead. However, his physical body has been destroyed. Only a trace of his divine soul is left. I don't know how long it will take for him to recover. The emperor's gaze was somewhat gloomy. He said in a resentful tone, the Hidden God sect and the Shao clan have both been killed. The only one left is Emperor Yi, who is living in seclusion in the Mangu Mountain range. After you sent this emperor the message, this emperor asked Yun Shao to personally bring people to the Mangu Mountain range to pass on the message. Ji Tianqing quickly asked, what was the result? Did the emperor see Emperor Yi? The emperor shook his head and said in a low voice, when Yun Shao brought people to the Mangu Mountain range, they could not find the entrance to the boundless world at all. They returned empty-handed 10 days ago. According to Yun Zhao's report, there were traces of fighting near the entrance to the boundless world. The mountains and rivers were all destroyed. Yun Shao suspected that the boundless world had been destroyed. That was why they could not find the entrance. When the emperor said this, Ji Tianqing suddenly felt as if he had fallen into an ice cellar. His entire heart turned cold. In that case, Emperor Yi has also met with misfortune. He was attacked by the demon race experts. The emperor nodded slightly and said worriedly, previously, you mentioned in the Jade Slip that the demon emperor wants to seize a few divine objects. It is a shocking conspiracy. It is very likely that it is related to the ancestor demon god. Based on the current situation, the demon emperor has very likely obtained 3 divine objects. His plan is not far from success. No matter what, we cannot let his scheme succeed. Ji Tianqing nodded and said in a serious tone, there should not be any problems in the short term. I will do my best to stop it. After a pause, he asked again, Emperor, this subordinate sees that you look anxious and worried. Are you worried about the battle at the front line? The emperor looked at him deeply and nodded. He said in a low voice, the battle at the northern border has been completely defeated. Chapter 1357. Ji Tianqing had been running around outside for half a year and had never heard about the situation of the battlefield. He did not understand the situation of the continent. When he suddenly heard this news, he knew that the war was so tragic. The situation of the Tianxian land had developed to such a severe state. His body stiffened as he stood on the spot, revealing a face full of disbelief. He lost his voice and asked, how could this be? Didn't the demon race start a war with my race, the water race, and the demon race at the same time? The demon race army is fighting on 3 fronts. How could they still have such terrifying power? The emperor looked to the north with a gloomy expression. He said with a serious tone, the demon race has removed the bloodline shackles and developed rapidly, but this is not the main reason. The real culprit is the blood god's illusions created by the demon emperor. Each blood god's illusions is a killing weapon on the battlefield. A peerless murderous weapon. They can absorb the blood and soul of the dead to quickly increase their power, and they can also create earth-shattering disasters. Just over 60 blood gods' illusions were sent to the northern border battlefield, But in just half a year, they have all grown to the refined spirit realm. The best of them, who killed the most soldiers and civilians, even broke into the primordial spirit realm. The blood gods' illusions with such power are called supremes by the demon race. They are simply the demons on the battlefield. No one can stop them. Ji Tianqing's expression and mood were extremely gloomy. He nodded and said, I already expected this to happen, but I didn't expect this day to come so quickly. Emperor, what do you plan to do next? The emperor was silent for a moment, then he said in a low voice, Not only my race's defense line has collapsed, the water race and the demon race are also in the same situation. They also cannot resist the attack of the demon race army. For now, my race's soldiers can only shrink the defense line and keep retreating. I would rather give up the border and part of the territory than make unnecessary sacrifices and let the demon race's power grow crazily. If we want to stop the demon race's attack and turn the situation around, we must think of a way to deal with the blood god's illusions. I have already ordered all the elite warriors that can be mobilized to the northern border battlefield and wait for an opportunity to encircle the blood god's illusions. Ji Tianqing thought for a moment and nodded. The imperial emperor is wise. The blood god is the biggest threat and must be dealt with first. However, the blood god scions have a special physique that is almost immortal. They need special power and methods to completely destroy them. The imperial emperor nodded slightly and said in a deep voice, Of course I know this. The imperial court has a batch of magic treasures and secret manuals that can restrain the power of the blood god. This emperor has already passed down the order to bestow those talismans and secret arts to the experts and generals who are rushing to the battlefield. Pausing, he looked deeply at Ji Tianqing and said, You don't have to worry about the war for now. The imperial court will do its best to deal with it. You've just returned to the central state, so you must have many things to do. Go and do your own things. When the imperial court truly needs you, I will naturally send you the order. Ji Tianqing understood what he meant, so he cupped his hands and bowed. Yes, your majesty. This subordinate will take his leave. Go. The imperial emperor waved his hand and picked up the memorial on the table, continuing to deal with official business. Ji Tianqing turned and walked out of the study, quickly leaving the imperial court. 12 hours later, Ji Tianqing returned to the central state city as fast as lightning. Standing in the middle of the bustling and vast city, in the middle of the crowded streets, he looked at the familiar scenery around him, and a complicated feeling arose in his heart. 10 months ago, when I left the central state city, I was only at the third layer of the soul refinement realm. Now, after 10 months of running and suffering, my strength has increased by more than 10 times, reaching the 7th layer of the soul refinement realm. The central state city is still bustling and the people are still living and working in peace. But I don't know how long this peaceful and quiet life can last. The human army's defense line was constantly collapsing, and the demon army had already killed their way into the human territory. His heart was filled with worry, as if he could foresee that the demon army would soon kill their way into the central state city. At that time, what kind of scene would the central state city be like? Just as his thoughts were churning, a spiritual light suddenly flew over from the sky and landed in front of him. He reached out and grabbed the spiritual light, only to see that it was a communication jade slip. However, this communication jade slip was not for him. The jade slip had Yun Yao's soul imprint, so it was obviously sent to Yun Yao by someone else. He hurriedly opened the sword world and woke up Yun Yao, who was cultivating. Swish! With a flash of white light, Yun Yao left the sword world and appeared beside Ji Tianqing. After she landed, she looked around and revealed a relaxed expression. Tianqing, have we returned to the central state city? Ji Tianqing nodded and handed the communication jade slip to her. Yao Yao, here is your communication jade slip. Yun Yao glanced at the silver-white communication jade slip and hurriedly reached out to take it. She injected her divine sense into it and read the information in the jade slip. A moment later, she finished reading the information in the jade slip and put it away. Her expression was a little hesitant. After hesitating for a moment, she said to Ji Tianqing, Tianqing, this jade slip was sent by my father. He asked me to hurry back to Cloud Soul Palace. There is something important. Uncle asked you to return to Cloud Soul Palace? Suddenly hearing this news, Ji Tianqing's expression changed slightly and he frowned. A thought flashed through his mind and he had a bad premonition. There are only 2 months left until the 1-year deadline set by the palace master. Uncle Yun wants Yao Yao to return to Cloud's Soul Palace. I'm afraid it has something to do with this matter. Is Yao Yao going to be taken away? Thinking of this, his heart tightened and his fists secretly clenched in his sleeves. Yun Yao saw that his expression was a little strange and knew that he was worried. She held his hands and said gently, "Tianqing, you don't have to worry. I know what to do. I'll go back to Cloud's Soul Palace first and see why my father is looking for me. At that time, if there is any situation or change, I'll contact you again." Tianqing thought for a moment and shook his head. He said, "Yao Yao, I'll go back to Cloud Soul Palace with you. Sect Master Xueqi and Xiao Wentian are both heavily injured. I can ask Miracle Dr. Bailey to save them." "That's good too." Yun Yao nodded and agreed without hesitation. But at this moment, another light flew from the sky and landed in Tianqing's hand. The 5-colored light wrapped around a communication jade slip. The jade slip had his divine sense imprint on it. It was sent to him. He held the jade slip in his hand and injected his divine sense into it. He immediately received the message in the jade slip. This jade slip was sent by Long Yun Xiao. There was only one sentence in it. "You're tuning in to the Xueqi's Martial Arts Saga YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.